But I didn't see the so
get him to safety and someone else driving him.
if anyone is here to speak to one of the ordinances tonight, we have sign-up sheets up here for you to sign.
One of the four. Yeah, I got it. I'm sorry. Yeah, I don't always respond, but normally I do. Like you tell me I'm going to have it, and I'll say okay, okie dokie, or whatever. But I got it this morning. I just downloaded it, made a couple edits, and sent it off to Laura.
No, Brandon. Never knew that.
He gets mad at everybody.
I mean, I will be surprised. I'm actually I wish they did when
He went off on me because I used the word lose to describe the women who were doing the casino night type kind of thing.
Meeting of the Lions Board of Trustees for April 15, 2019. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mayor Connie Sullivan.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Dreiskov.
Present.
Trustee Jocelyn Farrell. Trustee Therapist, I was like that. Trustee Waugh. Present. Trustee Miller. I just thought it was not. Trustee Therapist.
Present.
Trustee Brown.
Present. I can't see. I don't have glasses
Okay.
with me.
All right. We have a quorum. Would you please stand for the pledge of allegiance?
Peter, it's all on ordinances.
Are you okay?
I'm okay.
Are you sure?
And
Do you need ice?
back of one of them for audience business.
I don't know which one.
OSHA hates it when you get on chairs.
Uh-huh.
Will you hold
Now
it?
that it's not this is my.
Don't, no. Somebody else, kind of, yeah.
Okay.
Shadows just right on the back of one of them.
There you go.
Used to be you weren't allowed to speak on
It's all works.
under consideration of the others.
These are all items.
You ever get your taxes in? Tax day.
Oh, just barely.
Okay.
Since I have to write big checks, I don't rush to do it.
We don't have that right now.
All right.
I did the ones for
Sure, guys. Thanks for being here. Yeah. Okay, we're going to try this again. We have called the meeting to order and we have taken the roll. So we are at the Pledge of Allegiance. No one stand on a chair for the pledge. All right. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we'll take a brief reflective moment of silence, please. All right, thank you. Could I have a motion, please, to approve tonight's agenda?
I move for approval of tonight's agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. Can we take Trustee Miller's? There we go. Okay, the motion passes 6-0. Thank you. All right, we'll go ahead and turn it over to Sergeant Chris for everything.
All right. Well, good evening, everybody. And as promised, I have the star of the show tonight, Deputy Loya, who's our night shift guy up here on the back half of the week. So I'm just going to actually turn it right over to him, and he'll give you a quick bio. And
well, and thank you for the quick response tonight as well.
yeah,
Nice job.
I was going to really put him to work.
Good afternoon. My name is Deputy Loya, Cosme Loya, Junior, if it's easier. I've been at the Sheriff's Office almost 2 years. I spent my first year working in the South District. And when we had a shift change, I volunteered to work in Lyons. I would fill in once in a while, and I really enjoyed the people that I interacted with a few times that I worked up here. So I wanted to come up here and work. And just a quick background on me. I'm married. I have a 3-year-old. We're expecting a new one next month.
Congratulations.
So I'll be gone for a little while.
Awesome.
I grew up in Louisville, Colorado. So born and raised here in Colorado. And I was in the military. I was in the Marine Corps for 5 years. Went to college shortly after that in Denver. And then figured out what I wanted to do as a career. And now I'm here. So I just wanted to take the time and get to know everyone. And I'm sure if you need anything at night, it'll be me coming. So I don't go too far from here. So
Great. Nice to meet you.
Thanks for having me.
Welcome. Thanks.
Absolutely. I enjoy having him up here, and I sleep well at night knowing he's up here. So he rocks it. He impresses the heck out of me. So I don't have a whole lot, but what I do have tonight is I met with Kim and Marissa today to talk a little bit about the upcoming summer season in the parks. I've already scheduled out the extra duty assignments and filled some park positions for a few spots in May. We're going to fill the weekend on Cinco de Mayo, that Sunday, Mother's Day, and then, of course, Memorial Day for that additional parks patrol that we did the same as last year. So that also brought up the conversation of the contract that you guys are pursuing with the Trident Protection Group. I know very little about them, and I called up Sergeant Doug Ross from Longmont, who I know very well. So unfortunately, he really wasn't able to provide much information because it's not really through the police department that's contracted. It's directly through the city. So I don't know what their background is or what their powers are or anything like that. My assumption is, and I've already reviewed all this, but it sounds like a good proposal to have that kind of mid-level security in the parks. I think it would be a good way to go. With the busyness that we've all experienced, and knowing that we can't be there all the time, even with our 6-hour blocks of our overtime stuff, you know, if the guy's in there from 9 to 3, then what happens from 3 to the rest of the night? So depending on what we all decide on scheduling for all this stuff, I can move my schedule stuff around for more consistent coverage. But really the whole theme of it is just to have that intermediate person there to be eyes on and hands on and educating and walking around the park so that the park hosts can do what they need to do, and just maybe nip some things in the forefront before it ever gets to be out of control where we have to be called. So we surely can assess that and see how that summer project goes with this. I believe that after talking with Kim, that there's a 30-day type of contract where probationary period with this group where if we don't like their services or it doesn't seem to be applicable, we can do something with it. So. And on top of all that, what I suggested earlier today when I met with them is that if that contract and all that stuff goes forward, I think a kind of a pre-hire meeting, training type thing with our staff and those guys, just so we know exactly where they're at, what they can do, we know who's doing what, and the transition should go pretty smooth. So we'll push forward with that and see how that works. Traffic is definitely, clicking up. It seems like the guys that come up and do the assignments Friday through Monday, that we still do those 4-hour blocks. It's goes without saying that it'll always be there, as Connie pointed out a long time ago to me, that traffic issues were here before I got here and will continue after I'm long gone. So there's just never a shortage of that. I was actually spent 4 hours out there today myself, and a lot of 20 over people coming right through town. So it's just a constant battle, but we're still working very hard on that and watching the crosswalks and the school zones. That is all I have to report tonight.
I was just going to ask if you could give us an update about the fire that occurred this last weekend, and was
Which
there
one?
The one over on
The
South
RV?
St. Vrain, the RV?
Okay.
Is there anything, I guess, that town could do to prevent some of this? Is that just an accident?
I can say, so I talked to JJ a couple times today as their investigations are finishing up. So there's some things that are still under investigation, but I think the press, if you saw our press release, it pretty much said everything, but it does really appear to be accidental. And I know our victim is up in the burn center in Greeley, so his condition's unknown at this time. I can't really say anything else more than that. I think it's an unfortunate circumstance. It sounds like there was a heater issue. He was trying to do something along those lines, and something ignited, and it just went out of control very fast. So.
Well, once again, thanks for being on the scene.
Yeah.
You guys have had a very rough couple of months.
It's just not getting any easier. Cosme was the first one on the scene there. He was there within seconds and was able to pull the victim out from the RV and prevent him from probably dying. So right there on the spot. So that was a good deal. And then the troops came in, and JJ and his troops came in. So the fire was intensely hot. It took them a while to get it cooled down enough to even go in there and investigate what had happened. But according to JJ, the witness statements are very clear. And from what he was able to tell us before he was transported was pretty rock solid. And I think everything that JJ is finding out is really pointing. So it's going to be an open and shut deal.
Okay.
So.
All right, great. Thank you.
You bet.
Any other questions? All right, thank you. Nice to meet you.
One more thing. So I just wanted to, and maybe this will come up when Brandon speaks, but I just wanted to reiterate from our prior workshop that I attended that we're still moving forward with all of the changes, but I just wanted to caution everybody and I know that there was concern at that workshop that it's real easy to start reading law and then start thinking, as soon as you step off the line, we're there. we're still policing under a very common sense attitude. So I just wanted to make it clear, especially in this forum, that with the revamping of the language, it's just going to allow us to do more with it as far as education, warning, citing, and moving on from there. So I just wanted to bring that back up to everybody's attention as it's progressing through the works.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. Are you planning to stay for those discussions tonight?
If you need me to.
It's up to you, but I mean, you're welcome to. You might, I could see potentially there being questions if you wanted to stay. I know we covered a lot in the workshop. If you're available, might be a good idea.
Okay.
I know also, just so you know, I plan to pull the Trident contract because I had some questions about it. So there'll probably be discussion on that item later
Okay.
to do if you wanted to stay or stick around for that.
Okay.
But thank you again for being here. It's nice to meet you. All right, we'll go ahead and turn it over to staff for a financial update. What's that?
Yeah, I thought we were gonna show it off your forehead.
You want to?
Mine's bigger.
I was gonna say, trusty Caravan's gonna
I
stand.
can just stand and put my head down.
All right.
Claire would be unbearable.
Do you want to get the mic over there, Jim? Thank you.
Thank you. There we go. Up, up.
The lens is, it's not
It doesn't sound like it's on.
sleeping.
I do not have that.
Maybe that would help.
This is my first time to do this, so please give me a little latitude here.
Better than many other presentations. So you're on a roll.
Oh, wow, you went there quick.
Oh, I did, yeah.
It's early for that.
Well, this month we received $634,000 in revenue. And the majority of it came into the general fund, and it was for a property tax payment of about $182,000, which was good. And,
Blue lights
It
on.
looks like it's warming up.
It's, yeah, it's warming up. You can see it. You mean you change the aspect ratio.
Just get the overhead projector out. Please. Thank you, sir. I salute you.
Another thing that caused the income to be higher is that every quarter we do a journal entry putting the allocated expense. Tell me, I got it on the screen.
Yeah, it extends current on. Let me fix it.
What?
Your mouse is not too good. It's too
This is
disabled. I'm trying to get off. Why is it not? It's somewhere in here. Personal.
maybe.
I try multiple displays. There we go. Clone displays.
Might be better on your machine.
I got it. Oh, yes, apply. There you go.
All right. Thank you. Well, I was trying to explain why our income is little higher, and we had the property tax of $182,000 that came into the general fund. Also, every quarter, at the end of each quarter, we make a journal entry that moves the allocated expense to the different funds, and the offset of that is revenue into the general fund, and that was about $58,000. Sales tax is up about $11,000 over what we had predicted in the budget. So those combinations brought our revenue up in the general fund a lot more this month than in previous months. Our expenses for the month is $417,006. And some of those expenses, as you probably already realize, that they did not hit into the GL this time because of a timing of payment of an invoice. And that was about $83,000, and that would be in the electrical fund. So now we're looking at the month of March, comparing revenue to expense, and you can see what we've been talking about. The general fund is higher in revenue. The electric fund is higher in revenue because the expenses are lower than they should be. So it should be, you need to add another $83,000 to those expenses and be more realistic of what the month should be like. Water fund is pretty much steady. Sanitation fund, and then we have the Parks and Recreation Fund. Any questions?
Trustee Browning?
You mentioned $182,000 roughly property tax payment.
Mm-hmm.
That's how much we got for all property tax for the month of?
Whatever the mill levy was set,
right,
we sent to the board. That's what they're collecting from the homeowners.
But I don't understand. Was that like a past due payment from a big property tax owner, or is that our total for all property tax receipts for the month?
It's basically about 36% of the property tax that is going to be collected from our homeowners and our businesses in the town of Lyons.
Right.
And we got that much money.
Were you trying to say, though, that payment was more than was expected?
No, that payment was what?
That's just the total.
Actually, we predicted that we'd have $200,000 for the first 3 months. We got $198,000.
That's what I was asking, if that was just regular
we're
payments or
3,000
something.
under what we predicted.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. On the year-to-date, if you're looking at the water fund, the sanitation fund, again, those are reflecting on the water fund, the loan payment that we made in February or January, and then in February, the purchase of the water treatment plants, both it was taken out of the water and the sanitation fund. That's why their expenditures are higher than the revenue.
But that was the last payment, right?
That was the last payment. We own that puppy now. First quarter revenue compared to budget. You can see just pretty much in all cases the expenditure is a little bit more than the revenue because our revenue is not quite as strong because of sales tax. And it should even itself out. What did I do?
Do you mean over the course of the year?
Say that again?
Do you mean over the course of the year? Because, oh, yeah. You said because of sales tax. Do you mean over the course of the year it will even out as our
over the
sales
course of the
tax
year, we will
collected?
see our revenue, if we stay on what we predicted, will be greater than our expenditures. Sales tax that we received in the month of March was just about $53,000, and that is reflective of the January sales in town. So as we sell more, as the season progresses, more and more people come, and our sales tax will start to go up.
Okay, thank you.
First quarter expenditures compared to budget. As you can see, if the electrical fund is expenses a lot less than budget, that's because of the timing of an invoice. Any questions?
Does the parks revenue seem to be lagging compared to prior years? Did you, by any chance, look at that? It seems like it might be a little bit slower than previous years, or expenses higher for some reason.
In this number, we're missing the revenue that we received in 2018. We have not booked it yet in 2019. So if you add 27,700 to the revenue number, then your revenue is closer to what you've spent. And typically, we start getting more revenue as we go through the year.
Okay, no, thanks.
Yeah. Electric fund. Water fund. Again, expenditures has all the payments for the property in it, or payment of a bond. Expenditures has got the payment of the property. So if we had that 27 in there, we would be about 169,000 in revenue compared to 155,000 in expenses.
All right. You're
Questions?
filling in for an absent finance director,
That's
but
correct.
you're doing a good job. Thank you very
Thank you.
much for the update.
Thank you
So-
for being not hard on me.
All right,
Let
any
me
other
accept.
questions? Okay, thank you so much. And we don't, we're not going to have an administrator's report. Our administrator is in Slovenia giving a presentation on emergency response and disaster recovery, and was invited to go there with some representatives from the state. So we have her report, and we'll just refer to that for tonight. So we are at the point in the meeting where it's audience business, and this is when the audience can address the board for items that are not listed tonight on the agenda for a public hearing. We do have 4 public hearings scheduled this evening, so if you're here to speak to ordinance 1057, which is regarding the amendment to the municipal code related to noise and related to animal or fowl. If you're here for ordinance 1058, which is around code violations for the parks, or ordinance 1059, which is to amend the code for a lot of challenging titles tonight. Residential code for standards for roof access for photovoltaic solar energy systems, or for public hearing ordinance 1056, which is related to the boards and commissions. Those will all have their own public hearing. So if you're here to speak on one of those items, please wait until later in the meeting till we get to that topic. Otherwise, you are welcome to come forward and speak on any other topic. Each person will have 4 minutes. Give your name and address for the record, please.
Peter Baumgartner, 221 Ewald.
Thank you.
I wanted to talk just a little bit about overcoming selfishness and with respect to don't cave into the NIMBYs. So it was probably like a decade ago that we had a hearing in the town of Lyons where we were seeking to establish a trail between the Heil Ranch and the Hall Ranch. And I came to the hearing and Boulder County officials were officiating, and I sat down and there was an individual there, and rather than his name, he had NIMBY. And a couple others did, and I said, "What's that?" And it with amazing degree of arrogance, he said, "Not in my backyard." And so I think there that more recently, the issue has come up again. I was walking on County Road 69, and 69 now ends just about where the town of Lyons has land. And I was walking with my lady Denise, we have a Yorkshire Terrier, and there was a friendly fellow, and we chatted with him. He had the last house on the lane. And he said, "Oh, come by anytime." And a week later, I came by, and there was a sign up with a gate, and it said, "No trespassing," against the land. And I know there that Larry Quinn saw me. He saw me coming, and he put that sign up. I think he's probably addressed this town board, but he was in, when I had that particular hearing that I mentioned earlier with respect to where I met him and he said NIMBY, then it went to POSAC. POSAC is the acronym for the Boulder County Open Space Advisory Committee. And he spoke and I spoke, and then he shouted obscenities as I spoke. And he was told to be quiet or leave the room. And but the significance was that POSAC, that Parks Open Space Advisory Committee, unanimously voted to send the recommendation to the county commissioners that they establish that particular trail. There's a lot of people that come to Lyons and enjoy our parks from out of town. Why should not Lyons people have access to trails that we help pay for through our open space tax? And so if you have people coming from perhaps the surrounding area of Lyons with a particular attitude of selfishness, not in my backyard, I hope there that you'll resist that attitude. Thank you.
Thank you.
Michael Grace.
Hello, I'm Michael Grace. I live at 505 2nd Avenue for another week or so anyway, and then I'm moving right over here. I am a business owner and property owner in the town of Lyons. And I'm also on the board of the Chamber of Commerce. And so tonight I'm here to talk about commercial property taxes. Everybody knows about property taxes if they happen to own a home. If you happen to own a commercial property, you pay property taxes at a considerably higher rate. It's 27% of the assessed value of your property. So for us in our business and in the building that we bought down in the Eastern Corridor, we've seen a 51% increase in property taxes since 2012 when we moved in. Our business is not a business that's tied to the local service economy or retail economy, and certainly our revenues don't correlate with the Boulder County real estate situation. As well, I think I can speak for friends and colleagues and members of the Chamber of Commerce who are property owners on Main Street that it's really difficult as well when property taxes are really high and you're trying to keep your rents low so you can have successful businesses and keep our downtown, vital. And I think everybody knows how many open, empty commercial spaces there are on Main Street right now. So on the board of the Chamber of Commerce, we've been discussing ways of sort of getting some relief for our membership, and a few of us went down and had a meeting with the Boulder County Assessor in February, and we asked them what the options were, and specifically we asked them if they would be willing to consider looking at assessing commercial properties using some income basis as well as comparable sales as a way of assessing properties. That way, the tax assessment would better reflect, what a commercial building is, capable of sustaining in terms of a business. And they said, during the protest period, if you protest the value of your property, you can give them income information to consider to show them that, this could be factored into the assessment. So on the board of the Chamber Board, we've been discussing, doing a social and informing all the property owners in town that they really should consider submitting financial information to the assessor's office with their property value protests this year. And our liaison from the town, Mr. Drysdat, suggested that maybe we come to the board and ask if the town of Lyons, Board of Trustees or staff or administration would be willing to draft some kind of a letter in support of our effort to get the, is that my timer?
It is, but thank you. I think we got the idea.
Okay, thanks so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for your time and service to our community.
Appreciate it.
That's all I have.
Is there anyone else here who would like to speak during audience business that did not sign up?
Hi, I'm Coco Gordon, 523 Fifth Avenue. I wasn't sure from what you read off as the four things not to speak about. Did that include the weeds?
Nope.
Okay. I'd like to ask that we get some kind of dialogue between the parts that the legal team were going to look over so that we can come together and make some kind of communal changes to the verbiage that they say that they're, that's stopping it. We don't know what they are. It'd be nice to know what they are so we can get moving. It's really strategic time-wise so that 2019 doesn't slip by without the work that we need to do. I really appreciate if you, or whoever it is that can be in touch with our group. It would be really nice to get working on that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Don Weller, 212 Welch Drive. I'm here to just make a few remarks about the currently planned two-lane road that's planned on the east side of Bone Park. The current gravel lane is very dangerous and has been for a long time. Almost any time of year that it's open, people are driving way too fast, even though there's families, there's bicyclists, pedestrians, people walking their dogs. We've asked a number of times for speed signs to be put up, which is kind of ridiculous, in a park on a gravel path, but cars drive too fast. The sign's never been put there, and I fail to see how making that two wide lanes is going to make it any safer. In the years since this plan was put together that designed those lanes, some of the park events have changed. Planet Bluegrass bought a piece of property. They're going to be concentrating a lot of their camping over there on their campus now and parking. So I think there's fewer events in that end of the park that are really going to require additional traffic lanes. It's in conflict with what the park is designed for. And finally, it was a poorly vetted part of the plan to the public. I've talked to a number of people who were totally unaware, and I was unaware of the specifics that it was going to be two full lanes for traffic going back there. So for these reasons, I hope you'll reconsider, at least reconsider that aspect of the Bone Park next phase plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else for audience business? Okay, we'll end audience business and we'll go ahead and move on. I don't have anything for boards and commissions in terms of reports, but I did want to say thank you to David Hachimoji for his leadership on the Sustainable Futures Commission. I know you either have stepped down as chair or are planning to. I wasn't sure of the timing, but clearly the Sustainable Futures Commission has thrived under your leadership, and you really have accomplished a lot to move the town forward toward our sustainable futures goals. And so I just wanted to take a moment to thank you and really appreciate your service to the town. So I hope everyone else will take that opportunity to say a quick thanks. These are unsung heroes of all of the work that we do as a board because they do a lot of the research behind the scenes. So thank you so much. Okay, we'll go ahead and move on to our first public hearing. So if the clerk would please introduce the item.
This will be a public hearing, excuse me, for ordinance 1057, an ordinance amending chapter 7, article 6, section 190B, and section 230 of the Lyons Municipal Code related to noise related to animal and or fowl, amending chapter 7, article. Oh, stop that. animals running at large. So fowl and running at large.
All right. Is there, I don't know if anyone wants to kick off with just would you mind giving a brief update as to why we're hearing this ordinance? I know I talked to you and you probably didn't know I was going to put you on the spot. But being without a town administrator tonight, you might be the best person actually to give us the update.
Yeah, that's putting me on the spot.
It doesn't have to be anything formal, just
I can do it too. And maybe Brandon can help me out a little bit.
Brandon can do it too.
I can help out. If you can do that part of it, rocking. I love it.
Sure.
I'll clue in if I need to.
Okay. So this is before you again. It's the update to the code with regards to some of the general offenses. This one relating specifically to animals. We had this at a workshop the last time we met. We also had it on first reading. There's just a few cleanups that were suggested by Sergeant Chris and by the town prosecutor to help their jobs enforcing some common offenses that they see. And it's back before you tonight for second reading. I would make a quick note that during workshops some changes were discussed. Unfortunately, you cannot make changes in a workshop, and we didn't pull this off first reading, so that's why those changes have not been seen in their current form. But they, of course, are fair game for second reading tonight.
Okay. Thank you. Did you want to add anything to that? Okay. Very good. Sorry. We're all muddling through without our town administrator. Okay. So with that, are there any questions from the board before we open the public hearing? I know we did have a workshop on this, so we'll just dive right in. All right. Would anyone like to speak to ordinance 1057?
Your comments kind of took the vinegar out of what I was going to say, but Dave Hutchmo, G200 Welch Court. I want to start off by first thanking the sergeant for his comments in regards to the Sheriff's Department's philosophy for how they intend to police this ordinance in the event it does get passed. There's a number of different things I do want to address. I think I'll just, for simplicity's sake, go down in the same sequence as how it's produced in this amendment. The first has to do with the removal of the voice control language in there. And while certainly I think that, that in itself may be, it's not necessary. What I'm particularly wanting to call attention to for y'all is, along with removing language in regards to voice control, you're also removing, and it is in paragraph 3B, the language that, in a sense, says that in off-leash areas on the east side of the 2nd Avenue Bridge by the river where there is signage, in its current form, that would be gone. I think that the original intent for putting that in there was the board's recognition that they didn't want to, and it's not necessarily the right word, they didn't want to criminalize the behavior of somebody playing fetch with their dog in the river or in the future in the Meccano ponds. And so my recommendation would be to, at the very least, add that type of language back into this amendment. The second piece I want to talk with, and I believe it may have been discussed at the prior workshop, is the language in regards to dogs tied to a fence, post, pole, or other structure. It sounds as if during that workshop that it was discussed that, does this really apply to somebody tying up their dog to get the mail, tying up the dog, to run into the grocery store and grab a dozen eggs, or tying up their dog to go grab a cup of coffee? I don't think, and I think there was a agreement, correct me if I'm wrong, that no, it doesn't apply there. What I would ask, though, is that, obviously in so many cases, unless something's written down, it's just, it's just hearsay. And so I would ask that you be a lot more specific in, where is it and how is it acceptable to tie up a dog? My suggestion would be that it be
dogs are not, already? Okay, all right. Oh, that's.
You can write your comment down and give it to the clerk.
I will. Thank you very much.
Anyone else for ordinance 1057? Okay, we'll close that public hearing and we'll ask for a motion from the board to kick off the discussion. Trustee Wah.
I will move to approve ordinance 1057.
Is there a second?
I'll second. I'll second.
Any discussion or amendments? Trustee Browning.
Yes, I have a proposed amendment to section 7650, which deals with keeping dogs exclusively on owner's premises unless the dog, as it says, under effective control by means of a leash, so forth, in a vehicle, physically confined. And I think what's missing there is in the dog park area. So the amendment that I would propose to 7650 would add a subsection 3 that says, in a fenced dog park area. I don't think we intended to change this, but that's my motion.
Can I just clarify where you want to change that language? Is it in the table or is it?
It's in section 7650, running at large is the title of it.
I see.
And it's got a subparagraph 1 and a subparagraph 2, and I'm proposing a subparagraph 3 that says, in a fenced dog park area.
I see. Okay. Is there a second for the amendment?
I'll second that.
I didn't know if you had a comment about if the proper placement for, I think I understand the intent. It's just, are we getting the language? I don't know if the town attorney wants to comment either. Or anybody has a thought.
I think it was fine.
It's okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, put it in a dog park is, I mean, it's very simple and straightforward. So I just think having the language in there is adequate. Brandon?
Yeah, so what this section is doing is, at first, the 1, 2, and 3 that are existing is creating the exceptions, and this would just add a new exception, so I think it's perfectly appropriate in this location.
Can I just ask, that exempts one specific area in town, and I know we have talked about creating other areas where dogs might be allowed to also be off leash, and I'm wondering if broader language might actually be better in this situation, because it could be that any designated area the town specifies where it's permitted to have a dog off leash or something like that. I'm just thinking ahead to if we opened up an area in the river or at the ponds, so it could really apply to other areas besides the dog park. So I'm actually wanting to broaden it slightly. I don't know if there is language that comes to mind that might accomplish
I was just going to add that I think in the workshop it was discussed about other posted areas by the town would also be an exception.
Just unless otherwise posted by the town.
Yeah, right.
Trustee Browning. I'm sorry. Did I have the motion?
With the consent of the seconder, I'd like to withdraw my initial motion and propose a substituted motion to address the issue that was just raised.
I don't think the seconder
Okay.
has to second.
All right. Okay. So the language I would propose in section 7653 would be in a fenced dog park area or any other area designated as an off-leash area by the town administrator.
Okay. Is there a second for that amendment?
I'll resecond that.
All right. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote on the amendment. And the amendment carries 6-0. Thank you. I would like to just propose a very simple amendment to the table in 76230 under 7680 to add, change the wording instead of removal of dog excrement being the offense, failure to remove dog excrement to be in the fence.
Makes a lot more sense.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. And that carries 6-0. Thank you. Any other amendments or discussion? I guess that just to speak to the concern that was raised in the public comment, we did have a lot of discussion with the sheriff about their methods for policing these things and using discretion. And I have a lot of confidence that our sheriffs will use that discretion in applying this ordinance. I think that the whole purpose for this ordinance was to give the sheriffs more discretion and more options, I guess. It is, explained to us that it was either you give a warning or you send them to court. This way they can actually issue a ticket and assess a fine without pulling people back to Lyons for a court hearing for a dog off leash. But if they give someone warnings and they don't comply, this gives them another way to help enforce these rules. And we have had numerous complaints about dogs off leash, and it's a regular thing. And so we just feel like to maintain pleasant atmosphere in our parks and help manage the volume of visitors that we have, that these changes are going to be helpful and make it a little bit easier for them to do their job. So I do appreciate that sometimes you do read these things, and we had that same reaction, I think, the first time we read it, but after talking through it, I think they have lots of experience and can use the discretion to figure out when something really rises to the level of offense. So I'm comfortable with the way this is worded, with the couple changes to also allow for people to still have that opportunity to take their dog off leash in the right spaces. So if there are no other amendments, I will go ahead and call for the vote on the ordinance 1057. And the ordinance passes 6-0. Thank you. Will the clerk please introduce the next item?
Ordinance, let's see here, Dave, my deal jumped around here. This will be 1058, an ordinance of the Town of Lyons amending Chapter 11, Article 4 of the Town of Lyons Municipal Code related to the town parks.
Is there any staff report?
I guess I can give a really short report. Just like the last one, this was recommended by Sergeant Chris and the town prosecutor as updates to the code. Also a reminder that any amendments proposed during the workshop are not in this draft because we can't make amendments between first and second reading. And with that, I'd be happy to take any questions.
So I did have a quick question for you. It looks to me like the options for enforcement here are really limited to ticketing. Can you talk about whether or not it's necessary for this to give you the option to expel someone from the park? Is that always an option? Does it need to be in here? Can you force someone to leave if they're violating the rules in lieu of a ticket, or is ticketing really the right way to handle that situation?
So a little bit of both. And again, to reiterate what you said, it gives us more tools in the toolbox to kind of deal with ongoing problems. So obviously the first step could be a warning, depending on the situation and what we encounter. The second step could be a ticket, a penalty assessment ticket, which is a penalty assessment, a fine, a mail-in type thing, non-mandatory court offense. That's what we're shooting for here primarily in this ordinance. And then with the officer's discretion, you always have the option on a penalty assessment type ticket like that to send somebody directly into court anyways, based on the circumstance of everything. Based on the fact that the town owns the park, we would treat it as a trespass affidavit type thing, where at a certain point of time, there's a limit of what we'll accept, as far as repeated offenses, and then yes, we can trespass them from the park. If they come back, it's an arrestable offense at that point. So that's kind of the old 86, you're out of here, that you hear from, establishments where you can't come back. It's really just a trespass. And with the town having control over the parks and the property, then it's up to you guys to want to do that. And really the limitations are very minor. I mean, it's whatever you guys want. You
So-
don't have to reach a certain level, I guess is what I'm saying.
I guess I'm just questioning, like down in the bottom where it says any person who violates park rule may be assessed a penalty by investigating deputy with a fine of $75 for the first offense, blah, 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 blah. The third, is there a need to say, or is that just something that's always an option for the deputy who's there to say, you know what, you need to
Correct.
leave?
Yeah,
So-
it is an option. In fact, last year we 86'd at least 3 people out of the park, and they were all from Greeley. I didn't suspect they were going to come back. We sent them into court on those park violations because of the alcohol use and the outrageous behavior that was going on, which they did appear and took their medicine, but they never came back to the park. So it's always an option. Again, that fine structure just gives us a little bit more leeway once again, where if I'm trying to think of a circumstance, but it's just there may be a circumstance where someone's going to get a first warning and then a ticket and maybe a second ticket. And then what it does for us is it builds a really strong foundation to establish those type of trespass things. And, those things are all documented on our case report. So we can build a foundation on a certain person. Hypothetically, we have a homeless individual or a transient type person that just is giving us a lot of trouble in the parks. We can continue to build up on that and build that case at any point and then remove them from the park. I've talked to some park rangers out of Rocky Mountain National Park. We had a gentleman that actually had a trespass affidavit warrant that we contacted down here in town. But unfortunately, we couldn't arrest him on it just because of a glitch in the confirmation system. But it's something very similar to that, where talking to the investigators up there, it's like, oh yeah, this guy, he's just constant problem. So that's where that kind of stuff, sleeps. That's where we would want to activate that trespass affidavit and 86 somebody from the park. So in lieu of that, then we just, again, have those 3 levels of discretion on what we can do.
Sergeant Chris, just to clarify, you're speaking of someone you're charged for trespassing who's been asked to leave, is basically banned from the park at that point. But short of that, couldn't you also say someone you were asked to leave at this point?
Oh, yes.
And if they refuse to comply with that order, that would also be a trespass at that point?
Yep.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that it not being stated here didn't mean that you couldn't
Correct.
Exercise that option.
That's normal police work for us. And when we get into that situation, thanks for clarifying that, because that makes more sense. But that's what we would do normally in a situation like that.
Okay, perfect.
I was thinking more on the repeat offenders.
No, okay, yeah, no,
I thought that's where you were driving at. So okay.
Okay, no, perfect, thank you.
All right.
Any other questions? Mayor Pro Tem.
Yes, a question. Item number 17 under number 3 of section D, the big long list, says, back to it, any other rule posted in the parks. Would that include, to earlier question today, would that include speed limits?
Yes.
Okay, so that would enable, because I had been thinking we may want to put speed limit in here somewhere, but if that would cover that, it's probably better because it gives you the flexibility to have 10 miles an hour here and 5 miles an hour in another location.
Correct.
Thank you.
Trustee Browning.
Yes, I had a question for the town attorney. I was working on an amendment to address the use and flying of drones in Laverne Johnson Park, which has been an issue that several people have raised, particularly with the eagles there. But as I understand it, you're working on something, and sometime in the next couple of months, we're going to take up a drone ordinance.
Yeah, we'd like to do a more comprehensive either ordinance or policy on drones. It's, without getting into too much detail, it's a very complicated area of law right now because there is pretty broad federal preemption on this subject. And something we'd like to address in a more comprehensive fashion than just a one-off statement in this ordinance.
Okay. I'll await that then. Thanks.
Yep.
Any other questions before we open the public comment? Okay, we'll open the public comment for ordinance 1058, redressing Article 6, Section 50 of the Lyons Municipal Code related to, amending Chapter 11, Article 4 of Town of Lyons Municipal Code related to town parks and updating it's kind of an update to our enforcement options again, similar to the last one. Anyone? Okay, close the public hearing on ordinance 1058. Is there a motion, please? Trustee Wah.
I'll move to approve ordinance 1058.
I'll second.
Okay.
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion or amendments? Trustee Browning?
Yes, I have an amendment that we talked about at the workshop, but as the town attorney said, couldn't make the change between then and now, so I'd like to propose the same amendment we discussed. This would be in section 450E 15, which is the same long list that Trustee Drystat just mentioned, and that would be to strike the words catch and release only and substitute the words only artificial flies and lures may be used for fishing and trout must be returned to the water immediately.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Town attorney?
Just a question, are trout the only thing in the St. Vrain? I just think of a situation where he caught something that wasn't a trout.
I don't know, we could ask the fisherman. This language was given to me by a local fisherman who said that it's verbatim what the Colorado Parks and Wildlife regulation is.
Okay.
And yeah, I don't know if there's other things that you can keep them or not, but to me it seemed like we ought to parallel because it applies to the rest of the St. Vrain outside of town limits, and we ought to have the same rules here that we have elsewhere. Yeah. That's a good question. I don't know the answer to.
Yeah, I agree. It's my own edification. I just wanted to know.
Well, I believe it's due to the potential for competition. In other words, if you take a different species out of the river, it enables the trout to thrive better.
Oh, okay.
And we want trout. We don't really necessarily care about catfish or something.
Okay, that makes sense.
Does our parks staff liaison have any issues with the amendment? He did. Okay, perfect. Great. Good job. All right. Any further discussion on the amendment? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. And the amendment carries 6-0. Thank you. Any other amendments? Trustee Carabas.
I have a question for Dave, because I brought this up during our discussion, and I know we can't do anything. In the old, I guess the old ordinance, 11420, the destruction of park property, is there something on the sign that talks about destruction of park property? Because it's picked up in that list. Okay, because 11420 talks about moving bark from trees, shrubs. As I mentioned in our workshop, those get very expensive these days. So as long as that's considered under general vandalism and it's on the park sign out there, that's where I want to make sure that we're covered on our parks.
Yeah, the signs and additional signs per amenities are quite comprehensive.
Okay, good. And then that's taken care of, I believe, then number 17, any other rules posted in the parks that you asked about, Pro Tem. Okay, that was my concern. Thank you.
Any other amendments? Oops. I would like to actually propose one under that same section of the long list, E3, section E, number 11, to expand on this one to say no smoking, including e-cigarettes. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Any further discussion?
I actually thought that we decided, because I had brought that up in the workshop, and I thought that it wasn't necessary to say that, although I actually think we should.
I would defer to Sergeant Chris. I would interpret smoking to mean all forms of smoking, but I think it's really up to Sergeant Chris whether he has the enforcement capabilities he thinks to enforce against e-cigarettes.
So that's a good question, but I think it would fall under smoking. So I would enforce it under that and have it be challenged as far as is this a tobacco product and all that stuff. But it's a form of not knowing what they're vaping anyways. I mean, to me, it would fall under that. I know it falls under vaping, falls under the school statutes of tobacco products, and it's all encompassed in there. So I would keep it consistent with that and say yes, that we would enforce it.
So I guess my question is, does it help or hurt?
Oh, no,
any
it definitely would help. I
help
mean,
to put it in here, or?
yeah, because every time you get challenged with anything, it's for language, period, that it's
Doesn't
not
say.
specific, or it's
Okay.
not there, or it can be, looked at differently, or,
Mhm.
So absolutely, if I would put it in.
Okay.
Yep.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote.
I'm just wondering if e-cigarettes maybe is too specific. Or electronic smoking devices would be better.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we just passed that. However, I could amend the language for the amendment that has just passed. My motion would be to change e-cigarettes to electronic smoking devices.
I'll second that.
You had your light on, okay. Any further discussion on that? Okay, I'll call for the vote. And that carries, I think that's the first. I don't know if we've ever amended an amendment that passed before in the same meeting.
Sorry, I was too slow.
No, that's okay.
But that's a good point. I mean, it's just,
Yeah.
the devil's in the details. It's just that right there
Not
that
that,
we'll encounter out there.
Okay,
So
good.
I think it was a good.
I do have one other, and it probably falls into this category also, and it's somewhat related to Trustee Caravas's comment, where we do have number 12 says no defacing park property. I do think the word property conjures up signs and buildings, and I think this would also be helpful to broaden it, make it really specific, to say no defacing or removing park property, including vegetation, would be my amendment.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
We need a second to discuss, so.
I can also say, if it's my place to say, if I was to walk in there and someone's doing donuts in the multi-purpose field, to me, that's park property. So
Mhm.
it's going to get written that way. We've been writing that stuff for years. So removing the bark from the trees, damaging trees, shrubbery, landscaping, grass, curb blocks, to me, that is what we're trained on. So it's easy for me. But again, it's the language that you feel comfortable with putting in there.
Does the attorney have any comment on that?
No, I think it's completely fine to. Was it foliage or was it vegetation?
Vegetation. I think it's just the things that we're hearing are just, how can we make it any clearer that we don't want people to damage or remove, or, I mean, I'm thinking even to like pulling out, plants or, things that have recently been planted. So I don't know if it helps to make it clearer, but hopefully maybe it will send a message that if someone does want to try to argue with a ticket, it's right there.
I say we're rewriting it. Let's make it detailed and close those doors.
Did you have a comment?
So does vegetation include trees? Is that within that term, vegetation? Okay.
I think to distinguish it from, I think personal property, signs, buildings, again. But it sounds like maybe you would enforce it that way anyway.
We're going to enforce it regardless, but I do like the
Okay.
language being in there because it does make it specific. It just goes back to, enforcement 101. The statute, you've got elements that make that statute. If you don't meet those elements, you can't charge that crime. So you can have a statute that's 2 pages long with a lot of elements in it that you must meet to hit that crime. So there's all-encompassing words and language and stuff like that Brandon's very familiar with, and so are we. But I think by putting something just a little bit more specific in there to cover what we already know has happened in the past, it's a no-brainer at this point since we already are rewriting it. It's just a few words. So.
Okay. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote on the amendment. And the amendment carries 6-0. Any other amendments or comments, discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote on the overall ordinance 1058 as amended. And the motion carries 6-0. Thank you. Thank you for staying. We really appreciate your input on these. All right, next item.
Did you want Sergeant Chris to stay for the Trident?
Totally up to you. No.
Honestly, I just don't know much about it.
It's-
I can surely stay if you like.
It's your call, but I don't know that it's absolutely essential. I think it was very helpful to have you here for these, but I just wanted you to be aware it was going to be discussed. So if you wanted to stay, you could, but it's not necessarily required at all.
So we're still preliminary with the,
Thank you.
we rode together, so I want to get him home to his new baby.
Oh.
So, I don't want to keep him up
Please.
all night. I'll get in trouble for that.
Okay, all right. Go, thanks. Will the clerk please introduce the next item?
This will be a public hearing for ordinance 1059, an ordinance of the Town of Lyons amending Chapter 18, Article 3 to adopt the International Residential Code 2018 standards for roof access for photovoltaic solar energy systems for roof access and pathways for firefighters.
All right, is there a staff report?
Yeah, another brief staff report. This was another item we covered in the last meeting of the board, both in workshop and on first reading. If you remember correctly, there was an issue in the previous international residential code where solar facilities, photovoltaic system on people's roofs, basically had to have setbacks for firefighter access that were so large it kind of defeated the purpose of having PV or photovoltaics on your roof. The latest version of the International Residential Code amends that and makes it a more reasonable setback that you can still have a good sized panel on your roof, but also preserves access for firefighters. And this was recommended by the utilities UEB to adopt the latest version of the International Residential Code, the 2018 version, as that of the Town of Lyons in order to fix this problem in the previous code.
Any questions for staff? Trustee Farrell?
So I was kind of curious, how does this affect homes that might currently have solar panels? And I can think of one in town in particular, where it's practically edge to edge on all four sides. So what will happen to a house that's already done and has been done for a number of years?
So that'd be a prior non-conforming use of that roof. So generally the way those are treated is they exist as they are until they are substantially changed in some manner. If they were to come back into the town for a permit to put up that PV system on their roof, say 15, 20 years from now when it's replaced, they'd have to comply with these standards or what other standards were applicable at the time. But that use may continue as it is unless there's a life, health, safety concern, which is really more in fire's world than ours.
Mm-hmm. And then my next question was, do you by chance happen to know, is it difficult for a firefighter in that particular situation to pop those panels off if they have to, or do they break?
So my understanding is, talking to Aaron Capel in the UAB, that it is difficult. In my own personal experience, I do a lot of solar work outside of my role as town attorney. These panels can be very heavy. They're made out of glass. There's stuff in those panels you probably don't want to be jumping through. And so I can see it just from my experience with the PV technology, it being very difficult for a firefighter to access.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Trustee Garvis?
I was going to add to what Brandon's saying is you also, the fire department carrying the amount of weight and gear they have and in their boots, you do not want to step on glass at that pitch because you just slide right off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense.
And so when a fire department shows up, if they determine they can't get on that roof or it's unsafe, the first call they make, or a fire chief, whoever's controlling the fire, is safety of his personnel first. Look up on a roof, completely covered in glass, they're not going up there. So you don't ventilate heat, you don't know how much for the fire spread in the ceiling, so it's a necessary thing. And to answer your question on, or add information to the question on homes that don't have these setbacks, unfortunately, when someone goes to buy one of those homes and they're looking at your home that has these setbacks, the person that does the appraisal is going to note that there's, or not the appraisal, but the inspection is going to note that this one's safer to put out a fire on, this one's not. So the faster we fix this, the kind of takes care of hopefully not putting too many townspeople out.
Okay.
And sell the home.
Okay. Thank you.
Any further discussion or questions? Questions, and then we'll have public comment. Okay, we'll open the public comment for ordinance 1059. Would anyone like to speak to this ordinance?
Dave Hutchmunder, once again, still living at 200 Wild Court.
Can you hit the microphone there? I'm
Yes.
sorry. Push the button. There you go. Thank you.
Shall I repeat my address?
No.
Okay. Real quick, in the attorney's comments, it brought to mind, in the event that somebody is coming to this town for a roofing permit, would they then be subject to these new rules, which would then require a completely redesigning of the existing system? That'd be my question.
Thank you. I'd let the attorney try to answer
I
this.
think it would depend on the nature of the re-roofing. I think if it was just reapplying shingles.
Can you redo yours? I'm sorry, I turned that one off. Thanks.
I think, without being committal at this point, that it would depend on the nature of the project we're talking about. Is it an entire re-roofing of the house? Actual structural changes to the house that would probably require to upgrade to the latest version of the residential code. If we're talking about a more minor roofing issue where we're putting on some new shingles, something like that, it probably would not trigger that change. What we're looking for is a substantial change in the structure of the house that would trigger compliance with the current code.
Is there a motion? I'm sorry, I should close the public comment and start. If there's a motion?
Yeah, I'm on a roll. I'll move to approve ordinance 1059.
All right, is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, further discussion or amendments? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote on ordinance 1059. And the vote passes 6-0. The ordinance passes. Thank you. Next item.
It's public hearing for ordinance 1056, an ordinance of the Town of Lyons amending Article 8, Chapter 2 of the Lyons Municipal Code to revise the town board and commission's provisions.
Is there a report?
Brennan Dittman, town attorney, once again. So this one's been before the board a couple different times. We're trying to update our boards and commissions ordinance. As you know, during the prior meeting and the meeting before that, we spent a lot of time trying to make amendments to the proposed ordinance to further update it and add clarity. I just let you know, personally, Deb and I sat together last week for a couple hours comparing notes from various people, listening to audio recording, looking at the minutes, and trying to do our best to capture what was said. But as you know, so much was said. There were things that were missed, clearly. So we're here once again to do kind of a final touch-up on this before it is finally done.
So I have a question, and it's maybe a point of order. If some of the changes that were approved as amendments last time aren't made, do we need to
Please point those out.
Just do them again? Pass them again?
We don't have to pass them again, but please point them out.
So, because there are several that, and there, some of them are small but significant. Like the term was not changed to 8 years; it was remained at 6. Total length of service. There were a couple others. I don't know where. I'm unsure, I guess, just because of the way this was posted, that it was posted in its current form. So I'm just wondering, to pass it tonight without remaking those changes, I guess. Do you feel like we need to do that, or?
I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's fairly close, but there are some small but issues, and we knew that would happen based on the quality of the audio recording, the quality of the minutes, and the quality of several different notes comparing. So we are prepared tonight to, to collect whatever issues are in the current version and then proceed from that point forward. And I think we can, collect those, get the final version, and of course be reviewed by you, Mayor Sullivan, before it's signed.
Yeah, I don't know if I trust my own memory. So I guess I'm just going to say, here are the things I remember. But there were a lot, and I don't think I took notes that were detailed enough to probably confirm. But I know one other one was that we changed in the first quarter to submit the report just in January. I also believe we made an exemption to the 1 year before you could be chair, but I don't have the exact language. So I know there was an exemption to that. We didn't leave it at this unequivocal, you had to be in place for a year, but I don't recall. I don't have details and
And just
updates.
spotting these issues is good, so that we
Okay.
can go back to the audio recording, because at this point,
Okay.
we've done as much as we can with the notes and the minutes, and we can't really get any farther.
So we don't have to do the amendments again?
No,
can
you do
go
not.
back if we just
Do
point
not.
them out?
Yeah,
Okay.
if you just point them out to staff, we can make those changes to make sure. It's just the tortured process that's kind of
Yeah.
went through.
Okay.
It's made it difficult.
Let's do that during the discussion then. I just wanted to know procedurally what we needed to do. Okay. Any questions for staff before we open it up to see if there's any additional public comment? Mayor Pro Tem?
Actually, it's for you. A question for you. The process that we'll go through to make the changes, will we be going beginning to end again, or each individual give their?
You could.
Things we
Yeah,
could-
that might be the best way to do it, just to check each section to make sure we didn't skip over any. And yeah, I made notes throughout on the ones I thought I still need to say, so we can do that. I don't think it'll take as much time as it did last time. Okay. All right, we'll open the public comment for ordinance 1056. Would anyone like to speak to this ordinance? Okay, we'll close the public comment. Is there a motion? Trustee Wah?
Oh.
Been there
Yeah, I'll
every
do
time
that.
for me
And then I
tonight,
have
you
a
know.
quick question.
Okay.
So I'll move to approve ordinance 1056.
I'll second.
Thank you. Okay.
And then
Trustee Wah.
as we're going through, are we looking at the red line or the clean copy?
I'm sure everybody might have had their own way of trying to review this. I use the clean copy because I couldn't necessarily track whether the red line was the current red line or still had the previous red line. I wasn't sure. I looked at the clean just to see if the changes were made, but that's
Yeah,
how
I
did
guess
it.
really it's
So-
a question for.
Yeah, so the red
you.
line includes all changes that have been made to date, and that's
Okay.
kind of where I've been keeping my changes as we go through this. And then, the clean copy, we just accept all, and that's the clean. And so I
should
will
be the
be
same.
moving through the red line, but you're happy to look at any version you want, and I'm sure I can correlate it.
Okay.
I'm sure. All right, so let's start with section 2-8-10 definitions. Were there any changes or amendments or errors or omissions that you noted in there? Okay, 2-8-20. Hearing none. 2-8-30. 2-8-40. Just to note that the 8 needs to be 6. I believe that was the decision of the board last time in section C. That's what I mean. But that's not the amendment that we had last. So I recall 6. If anybody doesn't recall it that way, we can just put it on.
And we can double check the audio on that one to
Okay.
make
No,
sure.
It's
Trustee
in the
Brown.
minutes as 6.
Okay.
That's in the minutes.
Yeah.
I went back and actually read the minutes for a change, and that's what it said, so.
Yeah, I tried. I kind of just ran out of time. Okay. The other change I had was, this is also this section. I have an amendment to this section, but Trustee Caravis, did you have a comment first?
Yeah, I'll step back to see. I recall, okay, I know Trustee Brown indicated the minutes said 6. I recall I went with the 8 because you made a statement concerning that it'd be nice to get board trustees on the same 8 years, be consistent. Or in the discussion. Anybody else recall that? I guess the minutes do, if the minutes flat out show 6, then we're staying at 6, but I was just
Yeah.
bouncing the marbles around in my head.
I recall that as well.
My desire
That
was
we-
for 8, but I felt like I was overruled.
I thought that you weren't overruled. I'm actually fine either way, but I think it would be good to listen to
We
the
can check the audio.
recording for that, just to
Yeah, and
see where we landed.
And just, the minutes were kind of fast and furious on this one, given the nature and the numerosity of amendments that were made. So
Yeah.
we can check the audio on that one. I'll make a note.
Okay. Okay, so I would like to propose an amendment to section D, and I apologize, I didn't really think about this the first time around, but some of the other boards that I'm involved in have moved away from the term secretary, and move to the title of that position as a second vice chair. And the reason is that often the gender of the person who ends up holding that position ends up being one gender over another more often than not. And that they feel a second vice chair is just a less stereotypical title for that position. So I actually typed this out, but I'll separate these into two separate motions. So my motion would be to change the title of secretary to second vice chair.
Second.
Any further discussion? Trustee Wah?
I can't recall right now, but I guess I would just suggest to change that throughout if the position of secretary, I think, is defined later. So just to make sure that we get that throughout the document and not just that in that section.
I'll make a note.
That is the only section where secretary is used. I did a quick search. But great point. I agree that it should be changed throughout. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. Thank you. Approved 6-0. The other thing that I noticed in reading through this version was that nowhere in here do we articulate what the responsibilities of the chair, vice chair, and second vice chair are. And so I put together some simple language just to kind of clarify what those roles mean. So my amendment is to add either an E, or if it makes more sense to make it a subsection of D, that the chair's responsibilities would include determining the agenda and presiding over the meetings of the Board of Commission, and 2, ensuring compliance with the town rules and ethics code. The responsibilities for the vice chair would be to, as the second ranking officer, serve in the absence or disability of the chair and exercise all the functions of the chair, and also assume the office of chair in the event of a resignation of the chair or other vacancy of that office. And then the responsibilities of the second vice chair would be to keep or cause to be kept minutes of all meetings and the membership, and perform any duties as the board may direct or as required by law. Is there a second? Sorry.
I'm going to do what I'm doing all night long. I will second it. And then I would just suggest that, so you said one of the responsibilities of the vice chair would be to take over the chair position if the chair resigns or whatever happens. I guess I would just suggest that that be on a temporary basis, because the vice chair may not always want to assume the chair position. Or maybe the board wants a chance to vote on that position again, versus just accepting the vice chair. I don't know how you guys feel about that. But.
Well, I think usually, and I don't disagree with your comment at all. I think generally, eventually, once there's an opening, it is temporary until they select a new chair. I think it's somewhat implied, but I don't know that it spells that out anywhere. I know when they elect a chair, it's usually, I don't know if we have any language to that effect.
Madam Mayor.
Yep, Trustee Carabas.
How does Robert Rules of Order handle that? Because that's what we run by, and it's stated in our code anyway, that's what we run by, so that should take care of it. I'm not as familiar with that as I used to. Oh, you got the book? Good for you, smart man. I do believe when there's a resignation like that, it does, like you said, automatically reset. So if we follow Robert's Rules of Order and our commissioners are supposed to, then that should take care of it.
I don't know if Robert's Rules covers, these are types of things usually found in bylaws, but I don't know if it might, that's more meeting order.
Yeah, I trust Trustee Browning to find it for me.
Sorry, Mark.
Trustee Farrell.
Well, while he's looking, I guess my thought, though, is that really your intent is that we've got somebody who is temporarily out because they're sick, maybe for a meeting or 2 or 3, not necessarily because they've resigned. That's a different issue. Is that correct?
So, they would, it does say, and and I'm open to maybe striking that second sentence. I mean, if we just wanted to say that they serve in the absence or disability of the chair and exercise the functions of the chair, that they would just be doing that whenever the chair is not available. If the chair resigns, then I think it triggers someone to need to elect a new chair, typically. So I could see that if we just took that second half out, it might fix that problem. Trustee Wah?
Yeah, and I think actually Section C slightly does it for me. Vacancies, all vacancies shall be filled in the same manner as for an expired term. So I think that kind of implies a voting situation there and not.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm good now.
Okay. Any further comments? All right, I'll call for, I'm sorry. Yeah. So this was, it's in front of you if you want to read it.
Are you taking that sentence out?
Not if we feel like unless it's necessary. If you'd prefer I withdraw and reread it without that, that'd be fine. But I mean, I think somebody could amend the amendment. We can still, so if you would like to amend it to remove that sentence, that might be the easiest way to do it.
I just was trying to get clarification.
Right now, it's in there.
Okay,
but
cool.
I don't disagree that it might be better if it's not. So either I can withdraw and re-enter, or we can amend.
Okay, I would like to make an amendment to, and I don't have that one in front of me.
It's not in your.
No.
Okay, there it is. This is this.
Okay.
Right here.
So I think the numbering might be incorrect, but what I have is under D, A is chairperson responsibilities, B is vice chair responsibilities. And what we are amending is the first subsection of vice chair, which is that, the way I'm reading it is, the vice chair shall be the second ranking officer in the absence or disability of the chair, and shall exercise all chair functions. And the next sentence went on to talk about vacancy. We were striking that sentence is what's being proposed.
Yes, so that would be my amendment, would be to strike the second sentence in B, DB. Yeah.
Okay, is there a second for that?
Second that.
All right, so we're voting on the amendment, the most recent amendment first. So I'll call for the vote on that. Okay, so Trustee Wah's amendment is approved. I'll call for the vote on the amendment to add responsibilities for the chair, vice chair, and second vice chair. Any further discussion on that? Okay, call for the vote, and that's approved also. Thank you. Okay, that's the section 2860. Anything else on that section? Trustee Browning.
One minor change, it talks about doing minutes within 1 week after the meeting. I think we talked about changing that to 10 days, and that was a minor point, but I think because the volunteers who do the minutes are often busy people, that would, in most cases, give them like 2 weekends to work on it, so I think we talked about extending that from 1 week to 10 days.
I think you're correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and I just want to point out to listen to that section also, because we made comments about how detailed those minutes needed to be as well, to make sure the wording is correct. And then in the last section, during the first quarter of each year, that first quarter was changed to January, I believe, to try to just get them done right away, first of the year, the first meeting. Okay. Anything in 28110, Arts and Humanities?
Wait a minute, what about 2850, 2860?
Did I miss something? Wait a minute. Sorry, I got scrolling really happily along. Okay. Sorry. Okay, 2850 was compensation. Thank you. 2860 meeting reports. That's the one Trustee Browning just mentioned. Okay.
Yes. There was also in A, where right after the revolving loan fund committee insert, it says shall be by, and this says recorded roll call vote, and I think we decided that it was recorded vote.
I already took out roll call, yep.
Okay. It's in the clean copy.
And then on B, and this would be new, I move to insert in the second sentence after the word emails, comma, other than agendas, minutes, or informational items such as articles from media or professional papers.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote on the amendment. Okay, the amendment carries 6-0.
Also, in that same paragraph, at the top of the next page, in other words, it says, members may be sent to, email sent to.
Yeah, it's the 5 versus 7.
Yeah.
Yeah, I in my copy, I've already changed that. So that's better reflective of what the board wished,
So
so.
it doesn't require a motion.
No, I don't think it
Can you
does.
explain that?
So, yeah, so we made a change during the last meeting concerning the standards for emails being sent among board members. And then when we were looking over it, there was a lot of kind of garbled messages. But what I did was make a change for 5-member boards versus 7-member boards. And we decided it would just be easier to make everything, no more than 2, including the sender. And that is actually probably better reflects state law upon further reflection.
Okay. All right. Next section, 112, for 28110. Okay, now we're to arts and humanities, isn't it? Board of Adjustments. Economic vitality.
Yes. Well, there are a couple of, I guess these are all just minor technical perfecting amendments. So.
And I've captured all of those, I believe.
So that we don't need motions for that.
Yeah, the errata ones, I appreciate your red line, and I've incorporated those already into the document.
Thank you.
Good. Historic preservation. Parks and Recreation. Planning, Community and Development Commission.
Actually, and Brandon, I think this number 6 on planning community development. Did you make that correction? Would that be considered an errata or?
Number 6. Yeah, I think so. Okay. I think it was closer to the intent of your motion is what we discussed. So
requirements for legislative action and for all quasi-judicial processes.
Correct. So for the board's information, so a motion we had discovered in the review of our documents, a motion was made and passed concerning a motion brought by Trustee Drystad, kind of expanding upon the role of the Planning and Community Development Commission. When reading through that, there was some language I thought needed to be changed because, subdivision, zoning, platting, and plan unit development are all legislative as opposed to quasi-judicial matters. But the intent was to create standards for both quasi-judicial and legislative. So all we did was clarify that you had to follow state law for both. And I can read back that language if you want, what the current form of it says. So what I currently have is that, she actually looked to my red line copy. Sorry, I keep making so many changes. Here we are. So what I have is in the current form is slightly different from what is in the red line before you, and that is to adopt or recommend adoption of subdivision zoning, platting, plan unit development, or other similar land development regulations as required by the Lyons Municipal Code after satisfying all applicable notice, due process, and hearing requirements for legislative actions or quasi-judicial actions as required by the Colorado Revised Statutes and as directed by town policy, the Lyons Municipal Code, and the Board of Trustees.
And I think that's the spirit of what
That was
was
yep.
discussed at the last meeting, so.
It was just kind of a wordsmithing
Yep.
thing.
Okay.
Yep.
Anything else on PCDC? Sustainable futures? Ecology? Utilities and engineering? Housing and human services? The new Student Advisory Commission. I do have one slight amendment to the last D after talking with the student who's spearheading this. I would like to move that we just modify this slightly, and instead of saying they will be assigned, say they may be assigned. It may be that not every commission needs to have an assigned, and in spirit of managing how much we expect from them in terms of meeting time and attendance. And then to add to the end of the sentence to report back regarding items that may be of interest to the commission, just to make that a more complete thought would be my proposal. Is there a second? Okay. Any further discussion on that? Okay, I'll call for the vote on that. And it carries 6-0. Thank you. And I believe we are at the end. Trustee Farrell? Can you hit your mic one more time for me?
There we go. On the same Student Advisory Commission, on members B, this is minor. I don't know if it affects the meaning or not. So I just wanted to say, when I had said between ages 14 and 19 of years of age, I put a period after age, and then at minimum, the student must be high school or equivalent. The reason I'm bringing it up, because I didn't know if the way it's written without a period there, at minimum, does that apply to the age, or are you applying that to academic level, or does it cover both because you have commas instead?
I think for clarity, we can break up the sentence. I just put that period in. So.
Yeah, and actually, I'm glad you brought that up because I read it a couple times. Like, does it?
Yep.
Does it? I knew what it meant, but
right.
So the sentence made sense. But okay, thank you.
And there's been a couple other minor errata type changes we've already made as we've gone through this.
All right. Any final comments, Trustee Carabas?
On the one you just changed on the kids, what was on the computer on the red line with the actual amendment that because I made it was actually what's handed out. So were you changing what was on the red line or what I originally proposed and we voted on last week or last meeting?
So I went off the clean copy to see if everything was in the clean. I didn't look at the red line.
Is there something? I'm on the red line. Is there something missing from?
Well, no, I actually cleaned because what I proposed was we should have a handout of it. I think Miss Anthony handed it out.
Oh, wait, sorry.
Or maybe not. On my email?
Yeah, Michael, there it is.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. No, if...
That's what we originally
okay, so we have not incorporated this one yet.
Okay.
Okay.
But with what the mayor proposed,
You can share with me.
do we want to throw in the May, change the will to May, is what you did, right? Yep.
I can read back what I have for the D if you'd like. That helps in formulating your amendment. Okay.
Well, yeah, go ahead.
So I have for D, each member may be assigned as a liaison to one of the other boards or commissions to report back regarding items that may be of interest to the Student Advisory Commission.
So, was this last time you had already done this?
No, that's what we voted. That's right.
So this, I remember. I mean, and didn't remember the exact
That's
language.
fine, yep.
So yours is definitely more complete than what was in the packet.
Okay.
I mean, if we assumed his was the correct language that we should have had tonight, the only change would have been to make it may instead of will.
Okay.
And I think the intent is the same.
Okay.
Either way, so if the board is
Okay.
comfortable with using this, but going with the amendment to making it a may instead of a will, I think we're, we're close enough.
Okay.
Yeah, we can, if it's,
The intent is the same,
if it's
I
the
think.
will of the board, I can put this in and just make it to a may.
I'm totally
fine.
comfortable with that. I
Okay.
think
I just
that's a
didn't want
better,
anybody to question
better sentence.
months, years down the road, weeks
All
down
right.
the road.
All right, any further comments or amendments on this ordinance that we have worked very hard on for the last 3 meetings? All right, I'll call for the vote on the overall ordinance 1056 as amended many, many times. All right, and it passes 6-0. Thank you. Yay. I will say, this is one of those ordinances that we have wanted to get to for a really long time. And so I think it, well, not glamorous, one of those that is important to the town. So thanks for everybody's work on that. All right, will the clerk please read the items on consent into the record, please?
Resolution 2019-36, a resolution approving a professional service agreement with Trident Security Services for seasonal parks enforcement. Resolution 2019-38, approving a construction agreement with Gnome Construction for the remodel of the Lions Visitor Center restrooms. Resolution 2019-39, to approve the third amendment to the construction agreement with the Falco Construction Company for Public Works Facility Site Construction, project number 18 NKPWF-05. Resolution 2019-40, a resolution of the Town of Lyons approving the second amendment to the construction agreement for Walsh Construction, project number 20F, Bowen Park Phase 2. April 2019 accounts payable, March 18th, 2019 Board of Trustees meeting minutes, and the April 1st, 2019 Board of Trustees meeting minutes.
Would anyone like to pull any items from consent?
Yes.
Trustee Caravas?
3 and 4, please.
Okay. Mayor Pro Tem?
1.
Anything else? Okay. Is there a motion to approve the remaining items on the consent agenda?
I'll move to approve the remaining items on the consent agenda.
I'll second.
Okay. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All right. Those items are approved 6-0. I'm going to turn it over to Mayor Pro Tem for item number 1.
Yes. My only question, and I think it's for staff, and it was, I think, explained a little bit by Sergeant Christ, and that is that on this table, it indicates.
Make sure you turn your microphone, Kim. Yep.
It indicates that they would be available Saturdays and Sundays from May through September approximately. And it'll be for a total of 160 hours, right? And my question is, so Memorial Day, and Sergeant Chris mentioned Cinco de Mayo also, I didn't think of that. 4th of July, Labor Day. Will the sheriff's office pick up that slack, or can we get them to have a few more hours, or how will we handle that? Because those are really big days, right?
Would it be helpful if we give you, just maybe start with a brief overview?
I think it would, actually.
Okay.
If that's okay.
So this started with our discussion from budget with how we might help with some of the overall enforcement issues on all levels. And some of the discussions from the Parks and Recreation Commission, the Board of Trustees, and then just several of the impact issues that we encountered over the past several years, opening the parks, and what we have foreseen in our discussions with the Boulder County Sheriff's Office and with residents. And so during our budget, we discussed the several things. We discussed having a point of entry in Laverne Johnson Park with the gatehouse, stepping up enforcement with Boulder County Sheriffs with our extra duty, adding a second park host to Laverne Johnson Park, and working on areas of focus with our park hosts as far as being more focused on users and the different areas there. And then also, what would we do with our community service officer positions? 2013 was our last successful year before the flood during the summer, where we actually had the CSOs in place and we're actually being productive. So what we found here this year was that Longmont had a successful program basically with a third party where they could solicit this with a security firm if they put into place very specific kind of scope as far as what they wanted to do interfacing with the public. And so that's what we've done here. These hours are flexible. And of course, we envision before we even get started, what we would do is meet. It would be a meeting of Trident, Boulder County Sheriffs, our park host, and town staff. And we would put together basically a format of communication, what we would do dealing with various levels as far as infractions, whether it be nuisance-oriented or criminally-oriented infractions, and then how that hierarchy would work. If this type of basically, if this type of infraction was seen, this is how we would ask you to engage, and this is who you would pass it on to. So that's kind of still yet to come. We're putting that all together with the help of the Boulder County Sheriff. But yes, that's basically what would happen. It would not take the place of. These hours would not take the place of the Boulder County Sheriff, but would allow us to interact with them so that they would not perhaps have to be in the park with that presence. They could be elsewhere, perhaps doing extra duty traffic, which is a portion of what they're paid for, but they would still be in the area, and we would still have this presence in the park, interfacing with guests with these types of nuisance infractions, and just being there, letting people know about the rules and have that presence, and if something were to come up, they could then contact them.
I think, too, the other piece is, and we have talked to Sergeant Christ, is that we anticipate that Bone Park will probably get busier this year because last year it opened for the first time in the summer, and as more people know about it. So the hope was to have, with Trident, walking foot patrols where they go between both parks and help with the expectations. And really, it's more being kind of the eyes and ears and really ambassadors. And that's how there's an article, I'm happy to give it to you guys, about their work in Longmont. And that's how we found out about them. But to your point, Trustee Drystat, is our hope is, well, May, June, July, August are really the months. We've talked to Sergeant Chris. There's a sign-up that they do for extra help. We already talked about 4th of July because it's on a Thursday, so we think it's going to be Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And there is a challenge with the Boulder County Sheriff's Office because Dead and Company will be at Folsom Field. And when that happens or there's football games, it just requires a lot of extra duty hours. And so he puts the sign-up sheet up to have folks come here, but he can't guarantee it. So that's when we were talking. We were like, well, we'll work with Trident to have them reinforce 4th of July, and it might be Thursday and Friday. And then in terms of the end date, I think, our hope too is that if it works out well, and we go into September based on revenue from parking and camping, that would be worthwhile to cover that Saturday, Sunday, Monday.
Okay, yeah, that was all helpful clarification. It was pretty well covered in the documents. My specific question was actually moving toward hoping you have a little more flexibility than what was presented for us to vote on. That was purpose for asking about this, because the way this reads to me is it's specifically Saturdays and Sundays, and during that time, it doesn't mention anything about flexibility for hours and I would personally think it would be a good idea to have the for you to have the flexibility to even extend the contract a bit. And I like your suggestion about pursuant to savings and availability of funding in the Parks Department.
I think that's the intent, and I think someone from Trident may be here. I don't know if you want to come speak to it or if that's.
No, I'm actually from One-Way Disposal.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were from Trident. So,
Can I just let you know there's nothing on the agenda tonight for disposal? Oh. Okay. Sorry. That's all right. Well, I will have to stay on topic here, but I didn't want you to be waiting on it if you thought there was some. Okay, thanks.
To try to better answer your question, yes, the intent in our original discussions was that there would be flexibility Thursdays through Sundays on this, and potentially Mondays. They wanted us to try to pin down the total number of hours so that they could give us a number for the contract.
Yeah, and that I understand. Just in terms of what we vote on, and I'm not quite sure how to do that, to enable you to have the flexibility to add some staff, or add some time, especially for those critical days and weekends.
And it's a good question. I guess I'll refer to the attorneys. Our understanding was because of the limits with contracts that actually this can happen with the town administrator to a level of up to 20,000, but we wanted to bring it forward so that everybody knew kind of what we were doing. It wasn't just a contract that the town administrator would sign off on, so that everybody was aware. We were really trying to be proactive with the.
So it is the case if the money is budgeted for and it's within it, we can make changes within the administrator's spending authority, which is up to $20,000. But you could also, if you'd like to, we could amend this exhibit potentially, the scope of services.
Yeah, and I would just say, these provisions may be amended within the town administrator scope of authority.
Yep.
And then I'd like to make that in a motion.
Data whereas clause, probably.
Yes.
Okay.
Is there a second for the amendment? Oh, we don't have an overall motion on the floor. No. I think you have to have an overall motion first.
That's correct. Yeah.
Someone would just make a motion for the overall resolution first?
Yes, I'd like to move for approval of resolution 2019-36.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. And then is there an amendment?
Okay. And I'd like to propose an amendment to that consistent with the town attorney's recommendation.
So I would, suggest that a whereas clause be added that the town board of trustees desires to approve this professional service agreement for services for increased parks enforcement. So basically keep the last one and then say the town of, and then add a new one. So the town of board of trustees further desires to allow the town administrator to amend this professional service agreement within her spending authority.
Within the spending authority.
Correct.
Is there a second for that?
Second. I'll second.
Okay. So we'll have a vote on the amendment. Unless there's discussion.
Let me point out something real quick. Since the language suggested by the town attorney authorizes the town administrator to make that change, there is a provision in the contract, not the exhibit, but the contract, that allows changes to the services to be mutually agreed upon and signed in writing. So once we've designated the town administrator as having the authority, I think she could invoke that section and change it.
And I would posit, too, that the town administrator already has that authority. This gives her just further clarification that the town board of trustees expects her to do this. So.
Yeah, and actually, part of my reason for wanting to remove it from consent and have this discussion is to see if the board agreed that it's something that's important enough that we really want there to be flexibility relative to executing this agreement.
So I'm going to vote for this amendment, but I actually have some concerns about this agreement, just this step. And I think it's to the kind of the reason why it was probably put on here in the first place. And I'm supportive of looking at this option, but I have concerns about the whole thing. Just saying, is it a little, I'd like to know more about the plan. Like, can these people write tickets and they're going to start policing our community? I'd like to know more about them before we bring someone in with that authority.
Sure. In talking to Sergeant Christ, he doesn't want them to, and they would not write tickets other than parking enforcement. And he was going to check to ensure that that's even possible.
Because it does say policing authority and community policing in their scope of work.
Yeah,
I don't want to take us off this. I just want to let you know, kind of have some reservations that I want to bring up after this. So
let's
we can
vote
go
on
ahead
this
and vote
amendment.
on the amendment first. So I do support the amendment for giving some flexibility. So that is approved 6-0. Honestly, I didn't get the sense Sergeant Chris knew much about this yet. And so I kind of am disappointed that conversation maybe didn't take place before we're asking for us to approve it. I would have liked to maybe had a conversation with them about going in this direction and talking to them about any concerns they might have. I'm sure they're wondering, how does this impact our budget, and how is this going to change how we're policing the parks for you currently, and then talking about infractions. And I read this as they are going to be carrying more authority in the parks. And I think how we police the parks is critically important. I know we have issues in the park, but I also don't want to create an atmosphere of making people feel unwelcome in our parks. And so I kind of want more time to learn more about the plan, I guess. And I'm not saying I don't support it, but I think that we need to really make sure we understand this is a very different direction for how we manage the parks. And I know we need to do some things differently, but reading the information in the packet didn't really tell me much about them. So I'd like to know more about Longmont's experience and what exactly do they do for Longmont, and how do you see this impacting how the sheriffs patrol and interact with them? How does this impact the CSO and the park hosts, and who's really going to do what? So those are some of my
they
questions.
would be the CSOs, or acting like
So they would
communities.
replace the CSO position we had before.
Right, that we've really had trouble hiring for. In the past, we've had one or two that have started, I don't know, in mid to late August, and then we've had just trouble, since the parks have become so busy to hire for that position. So there's that piece, and then being able to walk between both parks. But some of the proactive steps that we're taking is having an attendant at both parks. And there's the new gate structure at Laverne Johnson Park. There isn't one planned for Bone, but we intend to have a park attendant. It's actually a returning person who was helping at Laverne Johnson last year, as of this moment, to let people know, when you drive in, here's the rules in terms of parking is paid. Here's the sheet. We give out a sheet at Laverne Johnson Park. We're creating another one as well for Bone Park to let people know of the rules, no smoking, no alcohol, pets on leash, paid parking, park in designated areas, because it just helps, I think, to have another set of eyes, especially in the back of the park, because the camping at Laverne Johnson, you're so far removed from the back when folks park in that traffic circle while they're unloading. It's one thing to unload quickly and then go and move your car. It's another when folks are parking. It just becomes a safety issue from the fire chief's perspective to get a fire truck back there.
No one's disputing all those things need addressed in some way. I guess the question I'm having is I'd like to see the fuller plan, the more holistic view of what your plan is. and understanding how this fits in and how it impacts the sheriff and how, I think it perfectly makes a lot of sense. I just feel like I kind of want to see that.
If we want to wait, which is fine, we'll miss, I think, probably Cinco de Mayo, but I don't know that it's on a Sunday. We're aware of that this year. It could be.
There's a motion on the floor, so so I'm actually going to vote no tonight because I would just like to hear more before I feel like this is the right group necessarily. I don't necessarily dispute it's the right approach, but any other? Trustee Farrell?
Yes. So I was kind of curious. Are the ambassadors by chance multilingual? We get a large Hispanic population that comes to visit our town, and I would just like to make sure that we also, though, have ambassadors who are able to hopefully fluidly speak and communicate in a friendly way, and especially if they can do it in other language besides English. I think that would be valuable. I just think that it would make us also as our town be more open, and this isn't an us versus anyone else when we're having to maybe speak to somebody about picking up trash or whatever it is. Okay.
And just one other comment, there's no not to exceed in the resolution. And it is right now already over the budgeted amount. So that's the other question, is just if we're going to allow more flexibility to go above the budgeted amount, we'll have to see how that's going to impact. So I think it's in the last motion that it's up to 20,000. So we're essentially authorizing up to 20,000, I guess, potentially. So,
but I think there's a difference between having the authority to do up to 20,000, but if there's nothing in the budget, if there's no funding available,
she can't do it.
Then I think it's a...
Yeah, if there's no funding available, the town administrator cannot use that spending authority.
Yeah, so what I thought was that it would be within the park budget if there are funds that become available.
There are $15,000 budgeted for the CSOs. There were 2 CSO positions budgeted. There were $15,000 budgeted. If we were to utilize 4 full months at the hours budgeted here, it would be $15,040.
The contract, just to clarify, says 16,920. And so that's just where I was going to say we probably, I don't know that it needs to be changed, but the contract already exceeds what was in the budget the way it's currently written. So.
And we put those numbers in, staff does, and I put that in hoping that if we had revenue collection with parking, and it's fluid, right? We typically, I think, actually sometimes under budget the parking and camping, that we'd have that flexibility in September to go into mid-September if that was an option.
Trustee
Did you see where
a couple of comments on this. I viewed this as just substituting a contracted third-party CSO provider instead of trying to do our own program, which has had, as you say, intermittent success and failure. I mean, it's hard to find people to be CSOs. I knew one of the CSOs I thought we hired for last summer. I thought she'd be very good, and 2 weeks later she got another job and she left. And it's not an easy position to fill, and so we're really kind of farming out our recruiting for that position. That said, the mayor's point is well taken that somebody's going to need to supervise these third-party contractors and make sure that they're not writing a ticket every 10 seconds for everything they find. But there is a termination provision in the contract that on 10 days' notice, if they're being too harsh or they're not coordinating well with the sheriff's department, we can terminate them. I do think that closer attention to parking may well result in enough revenue gain to pay for these. It may help us budget-wise. I don't think we want our sheriff's deputies spending their valuable time issuing parking tickets. They don't like doing that. It's not an efficient use of their time. There's better things on crowded weekends during the summer they can do. So I think something like this is needed. And I we basically will have to be relying on the town staff to properly supervise this and correct any overzealous or underzealous enforcement. And like I say, something we can get out of in 10 days if there are serious problems. So for those reasons, I'm in favor of it.
Trustee Wah.
Yeah, I would agree with Trustee Browning, and I do hear your concerns, but I think that we need to move forward with this so that we don't end up where we were the past 2 seasons. And just with the stipulation that town staff oversee some coordination between Trident and Boulder County Sheriff, just make sure those conversations are going on and report back to us, after the specific events and let us know how it's going, and so we can monitor it kind of from afar. But I'm generally in favor of it.
Can I ask who is going to supervise these folks?
It's most likely going to be Kim and myself, both. And it'll take, we'll have to work in step with Boulder County Sheriff, obviously. But part of what we're requiring and part of the service that's part of the scope for Trident is to provide us with daily logs of what they've encountered, and then to help us better communicate with the Boulder County Sheriff on what issues.
And have you had a meeting with the sheriff yet?
Yeah,
before tonight?
We had a meeting with the sheriff before we solicited this group. There were several in-state groups. One was the Colorado Rangers, which was not one that seemed to be one that the Boulder County Sheriff we were able to pursue with. And then this was a second option, and then the CSO. So we talked about all 3 with the Boulder County Sheriff.
Who did you meet with?
It was Bill.
Okay. All right. So I think we've heard the discussion. I think it's probably, I think my point is just, I think I would have liked to have seen the full plan before putting a proposal forward. I'm sure it's a great strategy, and I don't necessarily disagree with it, but I think I'm still going to vote no, just because I feel like I don't know enough about it to fully be on board with this group yet. And there's not a really solid plan in place, but I'm sure you will get one together. All right, I'll call for the vote. All right, so it does carry 5-1. Thank you. All right, the next item was pulled by Trustee Caravas. Item number 3 from the consent agenda.
Resolution 2019-39.
Mm-hmm.
Am I scrolling?
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
There you go.
A couple different issues. One of them is just mainly to strengthen the whereases. Again, as we've talked about in previous board, when someone comes back and look at things, when we're expending another almost $6,200 on product, even though it's grant monies, hopefully it's grant monies, just to strengthen things up. But also to add to, so Brandon is aware, I'm sure he's keeping track of, as we add an additional $62,000, on the background information, 3rd paragraph, and that's where I'm going to have split that up into 2 whereases and a couple words. But it's due to the fact that the Eastern Corridor, we were going to have this done before the Eastern Corridor project. We would have the utilities done before this period of time, and well, it got shut down. And the reason it shut down is our BOD, and we know there's issues with how the plant was originally scoped, designed by Honeywell Corporation, and thus this is adding to the cost of. So I would like to see Brandon, I'm trying to choose my words nicely, and because the things have been discussed in executive session, that all the time on this resolution and everything staff has done gets added to other things we are asking for, because it's a direct correlation to it. I was going to look after the 6th whereas, and my computer just shut off, my tablet, hang on a sec. The 6th whereas, after that, the paragraph 3 of the background information that staff provided, the 1st whereas, and after the sixth one would be, whereas permanent water service to the site was planned to be installed under the Eastern Corridor Utility Project and was anticipated to be completed prior to the building and construction. And then another whereas, the project has been delayed due to CDPHE withholding construction permits pending the town's resolution of high biological oxygen demand levels at the, then I added the word new, wastewater treatment plant. Then I've added engineered, designed, and built by the Honeywell Corporation. And I forgot to send you that email. Sorry again, but I do have a printout.
If it passes, please give us that printout.
Yeah, and then I was going to ask for how my fellow trustees are stomaching paragraph 5, also of the memo, breaking that up and adding to whereas, because just it adds, as we've discussed before, if someone looks back 3, 4, 5 years down the road, maybe longer, questioning additional money is being spent, why delays, it just adds why we're doing what we're doing. Because we can vote no on this and not approve it, well, then it explains that in doing so, we delay the project based on those week counts, months.
I guess my question is that how confident do we need to be in the direct correlation to put this in the whereases? There are some other factors, I think. That,
I mean, there's a lot going on here,
yeah.
Certainly. It's just a whereas clause. So all it does is it's prefatory language which informs the decision. So it's not binding in a certain kind of way. It doesn't bind you to the theory that this is the sole clause in the future.
Okay. Is there a second for the motion?
Second.
Any further discussion? Could you read it one more time?
I can. After the sixth whereas permanent water service to the site was planned to be installed under the Eastern Corridor Utility Project and was anticipated to be completed prior to the building construction. And whereas the project has been delayed due to CDPHE withholding construction permits pending the town's resolution of high biological oxygen demand levels at the new, that's added to this paragraph, wastewater treatment plant engineered, designed, and built by the Honeywell Corporation, period.
All right, any further discussion on the motion? Trustee Farrell?
Since I wasn't here for the whole discussion, I'm going to recuse myself from voting.
Abstain.
Okay.
Abstain.
Abstain from voting.
Abstain.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll call for the vote on the amendment. All right, and it carries 5-0 with 1 abstention. Other, Trustee Garibus?
I had stated that the last paragraph 5 of that background information, I've been beating this one around mostly yesterday and today, whether breaking any of that up, giving just further information why we're spending additional monies, upwards of $62,000 on top of the project. So I'm just looking for you guys. Is it worth it? Or is that where I add strength enough for future boards? People, if they question and wonder what's going on.
I guess I would ask staff if they have any concerns or feedback about justification for the expense. Can you hit them? Maybe, are there too many mics? Oh, there you go.
Okay. So I don't know the exact correlation between spending the money through the Eastern Corridor project and adding it to the Public Works site, but either way, we probably would have spent the money to get the water to the site. But we are in a situation where we need fire protection out there because we are doing construction and building those buildings, and that is a requirement from the fire chief and for the building permits that have been issued out there to do construction. So, it's something that we need to have at the site to continue those two projects. And those are two separate projects. If we don't do that, we potentially will have to shut down those projects and incur costs per day.
And I understand that, and I'm not questioning that. I was just asking whether the board feels we should, parts of that paragraph 5 to strengthen. Just if someone questions something years down the road, as we've seen already happen, and it's continuing to happen with other issues. So that's, like I said, I'm fine with the way it is, not adding any more whereas is to strengthen it, but I was just, and I'm not questioning, like I said, I'm not questioning
Right.
whether we do it or not. Yeah, it's all, we need to get the fire protection there and get that hydrant
Right.
flowing. But I was just asking.
I do have, it's a tangential but related question. Will this be grant funded? It actually doesn't explicitly say that in the
Right,
staff
so currently, it should have been funded under the Eastern Corridor Project, which is CDBG and EDA funding.
document.
Now, we will have to fund it through FEMA, and it is not currently in the FEMA scope of work. So when we close the project, I will have to request that to be funded at closeout.
So there's a risk there then?
There is a risk.
Right. Okay,
Mhm.
just so we're aware of that
Mhm.
risk, that it
Mhm.
may not be grant funded.
Right, and maybe, yeah.
But it may or it
Mhm.
may not.
Exactly.
Okay.
Trustee Browning?
My question is somewhat related to that. Will there be a corresponding reduction in the expenses for the Eastern Corridor project, assuming it's eventually green-lighted for this? I mean, if this element was going to be in that one and that's moved to this one, is it just
Yeah.
moving the same amount, or would the amounts differ?
That portion will no longer be in the scope of work for the Eastern Corridor. And so, yeah, I don't know in the current bid if it was included in there or not. We may have already removed it from there, knowing that we were going to have to, and we could have amended it back into the Eastern Corridor if the timing would have worked out that way.
Because if I remember right, when we did the rebid on the Eastern Corridor project, a number of things were taken out to try to get the bids to fit the grant amount. And I was wondering if this was one of them. Any idea?
I can't remember specifically if it was or not, but it would be taken out. But actually, we didn't take a lot out of the Eastern Corridor bid. We just allowed more options for the, what's the word I'm looking for? Just the type of construction that they could use for boring versus open cut, just to reduce costs. But EDA wouldn't allow us to reduce the scope as we had thought we could.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Trustee Caravas?
Based on response to Pro Tem Dreiset's question, so we're at risk that money may not get approved. That means we have to find, staff has to find, you guys have to find $62,000 somewhere. And we're planning on meeting this May for CIP, our lists, and see what things go, so it adds up to that. Like I said, I don't know how I've been beating this one around. Based on that answer, though, since it is a risk, I would like to see somehow, if staff could wordsmith paragraph 5 in this whereas is just solidifying the reason we're doing this and spending this money, whether we get it grant funded or we have to pocket it ourselves or pay it for it out of our pocket ourselves. It's to stave off these delays any longer and get water protection out there, otherwise our project stops, and that's going to add additional costs because we know what costs are of stopping a project, sending workers home, then retooling, because we got that next on the agenda.
Trustee Caravas, when you say paragraph 5, background information, do you mean
the background information
4 of the staff memo?
Yes, background
Okay.
information in the staff memo.
So we
Sorry,
can
I
amend that without direction from the board. That's a staff memo.
Maybe a legislative history on this.
That's
would be
what I was
a
about
really
to
good
suggest,
Next
yeah.
step, just to kind of
Yep.
summarize the whole project
Yep.
and document, what's happened. I think maybe that might be a better way to accomplish what you're wanting to do.
I forgot about that evidence. So
I know
yes.
that's a lot of work for staff, but it's because of the funding for this being so complex and there being 60,000 is getting to be a pretty big amount. And we've got several of those kind of floating around now where we're like hoping that, comes through. So maybe that's a.
That would be my advice as well. It's a much cleaner way to do it.
Do I make a motion for that or just ask for that?
I think staff can take that direction without a motion.
Yeah, they can just
Thank
take
you.
direction.
Sorry for adding that onto your.
Okay. Well, let me throw one more wrench into this whole discussion.
Oh, I've been saved.
DeFalco was the contractor on the Main Street project where we're deficient in our documentation for
Yes.
that. Have we had any conversations with them about helping us get that documentation and in very short order?
Yes.
And how are they responding to that request?
And they're being fully supportive to help us any way that we need it, and they will be working closely with staff here at town to get any documentation required. And actually, Tony DeFalco was going to come here tonight, but we just didn't know what time he needed to be here. But they are being fully cooperative and want to help the town in getting that documentation together.
Okay. And just knowing that we are now kind of needing to do it
Very soon.
very quickly, and do we have a good sense of what's really involved in getting that done? And do they have the means to do it, do what we need to get the CDOT we're a little blacklisted, for lack of a better word, right now with CDOT, and there's a lot of funding potentially around the corner for us. And so I can't stress how critical it is, and I'm a little reluctant to keep awarding them contracts when we have a big, and surely we have our own, kind of issues in terms of how this got to this point. But at this point, they are the contractor of record and the only ones that can help resolve this.
Yeah, we absolutely understand that, and they do too.
I've just had I've had several conversations, but I know that we have one staff member that's working closely in conjunction on this, and from my understanding, some of this information, if not a lot of it, was transmitted during the project, so it is there. It's a matter of going back through records and finding it, and he's been helpful in that regard and says that he'll do his best to find it. They're working on that.
Okay.
Yeah.
How have they performed on all the other projects? Because they've been pretty involved in our flood recovery. Would you say that that's a outlier in their performance, or do we struggle getting any of our documentation and paperwork from them?
When we request it, we get it. But yeah, no, I mean, they have performed well on the parks projects. Those are the ones I can speak to.
Yeah, I would agree with that. They perform well as a contractor, and I think we need to be clear on our request for documentation as well. But I do believe that they're always cooperative when we are requesting something or needing something from them, and they do cooperate with us. So,
okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. Any further discussion? Trustee Carabas?
I was just going to make the motion that you could probably ask for.
I think there's a motion.
Yeah, it's a motion because you amended it. So.
Yes. So I think we're just, at this point, unless there's further discussion, call for the vote. Okay. And the motion carries 6-0. Thank you for staying late.
Yeah.
I don't think you get to leave yet, though.
No, one more.
You guys just want to plow through, or do you need a break?
Plow through. We got one more, right?
Plow through,
Yeah,
plow
one more.
through. Okay, next one, Trustee Carabas.
I just didn't see in Pro Tem Director brought up in the last one, I didn't see where the specific money, the additional $111,000 from. All the times I remember, now you got me. Damn. Okay. I just didn't see where, as in what Mayor Pro Tem Bryce had brought up in the last resolution, was this one of the whereases, the additional funds, where they're coming from and who's possibly hoping paying for them?
Oh,
I might have missed that. I don't think I saw it in there, so.
I think I left that out. This is all FEMA funded.
Okay. I think we usually add whereases that's where the funds are coming from. In all the past projects, so I just suggest we add that or do what we usually do.
Yeah, we usually do, and the one I'm looking at of 2940, we're talking about the Walsh contractor,
Yeah,
right? It's the third whereas clause. The town has secured FEMA grant funding for such work.
So then I missed it. Sorry.
All right. Any further discussion? Trustee Browning?
Yes, I had some questions about this one, and it relates to comment made during audience business and some emails we've gotten, and also, frankly, a number of comments from the public during the shutdown period in Bone Park, and that relates to the 2-lane road, expanded path, whatever you want to call it. Is there a cost estimate in the contract for what we will be spending to convert the existing one-lane path into a two-lane, whatever it is, road, byway?
It's broken down into the earthwork and the unit costs for crusher fines. So I would have to go in and break all that out.
Okay. I was just wondering how the costs of doing that element of the park plan would compare to the increased cost that we had from the construction delays. In other words, if we decided to look at that again, and you took that element out of the project, would that reduce, even, I understand it's grant funded and it's not our tax money, but it's somebody's tax money. Could that reduce the amount of cost increase?
Less than $5,000, maybe $8,000.
Really? I mean, you're gonna have to survey that. I mean, survey and stake it out, because it was staked out, but which is how a lot of people found out about it. And then, but I think all those are gone now. You're gonna have to grade it.
Yeah, I would have to get the exact numbers, but it's not going to be exceptional. I did go back. I knew this was going to be probably one of the topics. I did go back. This was a topic that was addressed last April, right before we were shut down, it is addressed also as part of the public process on Lions Parks MP, which is the kind of the website that was kept for all the weekly meetings, the public meetings, and has all the notes. And so certainly I can understand some of the concern and the comments here, but just to address the reasoning behind the double trail, which is, I know, being referred to now as a double road. The reasoning behind it was that one of the goals through the Lions Recovery Action Plan, which was the document that was created right after the flood, was one of the goals for Bohm Park. I believe it was the seventh goal, was to make sure that Bohm Park could facilitate the special events and festivals that took place there prior to the flood. Since the 25 acres where all of the festival and special event parking took place pre-flood was going to be actually built as a park, or built out as a park where the ball fields were going to go, the decision during the planning process was made that the overflow, or some overflow and event parking, could take place at the west side of the dog park. So the east side trail would act during special events as an access road to that overflow or event parking. In order to do so safely, and for those people that have seen kind of what has transpired this past couple years with Lions outdoor games, it was decided that the best idea would be to make that into a double lane, so that one lane would be in and one lane would be out during special events. During that same discussion, it was also stated that probably even during peak summer events, when we have as much traffic on that trail, it would be much safer for users, because cyclists could be, you could have that same two-way traffic. So high-speed cyclists coming off of Picture Rock Trail could be coming down on one side, and then pedestrians using our dog park walking in could be on the other side. It is going to be crusher fines. It's not going to be curbed and guttered like a road or anything like that. And then it's just going to be seeded in between. But I think those were some of the comments that came out of the public process. It's going to have two gates. It'll have a gate right at the front, and then it's going to have a secondary gate that will allow for pedestrians to pass at the multi-purpose field, but won't allow for vehicles to pass. So certainly we took that into account during the planning process as well. We can certainly, if the board would like us to revisit it and keep it down to just a single, right now it's a 10-foot wide multi-use path, we can do that as well. But I think during special events, when we do attempt to do parking or overflow parking out there, we will have issues, and certainly if we ever have an emergency or medical issue, we may have issues as well when we've got pedestrians and even traffic on one access.
How many special events do you anticipate as we hear now? I mean, I understand what was in the LRAP, but back then, like somebody said, Planet Bluegrass was using areas of parking. They're not using that park anymore. We've got Lions outdoor games, which is what, 2 days per year?
Yes, 2 days, and Planet Bluegrass actually is still using our parking and has been in meetings with us where they are requesting to continue to use.
But not the dog park for parking.
No, right now they're still using Bone Park.
Right.
So they still want to use the 25 acres, which will be built out. So that won't be an option for them any longer, once it's built with ball fields. So before the flood, pre-flood, we had both Planet Bluegrass festivals, Lions outdoor games. We on and off would have good old days out there. But then we also had outside festivals, and whether or not the town wants to continue with that will be a choice as we move along. But we had things like the Diva Dash, Devil Dash. We had various cycling races that would stage out of Bond Park, and various other events. So again, whether or not we attempt to stage those types of events, that'll be a question.
Yeah, I mean,
for the future.
I don't know. It seems to me, I mean, we had a long discussion about continuing to lose money on outdoor games, and we've all talked about that. It seems like to me this is something else that we're spending, even though it's grant funds, staff still involved with it and that sort of thing, to support 2 days of Lions outdoor games. And I mean, I see Planet Bluegrass, they've got their own parking now that they keep 100% of. I mean, you know, maybe they'll use the front parking lots and maybe the lot in front of the wastewater treatment plant now that it's been leveled and improved. But it seems to me it's kind of speculative that they'll ever even need to park in the dog park for Planet Bluegrass. It looks like to me that we're going to a lot of time and effort to support an event that we're kind of questioning whether it should really continue at all. And we're doing this for 2 days a year, and it just would it be possible to hire a flagger on each end of the 10-foot wide, because you can drive a car on that road now.
I think we're getting a little bit out of the scope here of this item. We really didn't post an agenda item to talk about whether we should modify the park plan. I mean, this is about the contract to remobilize, correct? I mean, I really feel like if we're going to have this discussion, we should have a separate agenda item.
That'd be fine.
To do that. I mean, I will say I disagree. We had at least 3, if not more, planning meetings around designing this park, and I do think we will have more events. And so, if we want to have a broader discussion, we can. But I hate to do that and embed it in a topic that looks like a pretty straightforward contract to remobilize. And we knew we were going to run into these costs because of the delay. So I don't think there's any surprises here. So I don't want to use this as a way to, for some people who are unhappy they didn't participate the first time in the discussion, to find another way to try to get their mission accomplished. And we can hear them out if that's the board's desire. But I think to spend the time tonight isn't really the appropriate place to have that conversation.
But I'm fine with scheduling this as a separate item sometime, and that's probably better, in fact, for getting public input than pulling it from the consent agenda and taking it up at the end of the meeting. And if it is possible to get a ballpark cost estimate of what this park feature is adding to there, I think that would be information that people would like to have. And I certainly don't intend to hold up going forward with this contract. I'm going to vote in favor of this motion. But there's just been a lot of interest expressed on this, and I think it would be good to provide people with that information. Maybe we decide not to change it, or that the costs are minimal compared to the overall project. But I do think a lot of people have expressed interest, and I think those questions need to be asked. But I am in favor of the overall motion tonight.
Is there a motion to approve the resolution?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, I'll go ahead and call for the vote. All right, and the contract is approved 6-0. Thank you.
What was the cost on that additional 142?
111 something. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Trustee reports. Trustee Browning, do you want to start? Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Sorry, Tracy.
At least it's not midnight. Could be worse.
And
SFC. The SFC met last Thursday. Much of the discussion was in planning for the.
Can you guys
Oh,
time
sorry.
out, or just, would you mind doing that later? Thank you. It's okay.
Was in planning for the cleanup day, and that's ongoing. There's a subcommittee working on that. That's going to be on May 18th. We discussed trying to coordinate the limb pickup part of the cleanup day with the curbside limb pickup that was budgeted this year. And I think the staff suggestion was that we probably can't get the curbside pickup done before the May 18th cleanup day, but I think the staff is at least going to try to notify residents that there'll be other opportunities, perhaps June, early summer was mentioned for them if it's, as I think Trustee Drystat suggested last time, that somebody doesn't have a trailer, doesn't have a pickup truck, has trouble getting their limbs down to the park, that there may be a curbside cleanup option coming later, and we're working on getting that information out. Let's see, Dave Hachimanji, who was here on multiple items tonight, is stepping down as chair, and the David Match was, I believe, suggested by the commission to take that over, and Don Weller to be the second vice chair, I think. Is that right? Formerly known as secretary, I guess. Let's see. Anything else? I believe that's most of it. It's something I'll mention for future budget. Doesn't need any immediate attention, but I think that there's a possibility that the county's new sustainability tax, which was kind of formerly devoted for open space, may produce some amount of tax revenue sharing with local municipalities. David's worked at the county, and I think that he's continuing to put in plugs for not just basing that on population, doing it pro rata by population, because with Lions 2,000 people, we wouldn't get very much of it. I think he's working for a minimum amount for small communities, so that may be something that's positive budget news for next year.
Great. Mayor Pro Tem, we have a visitor.
I was unable to attend the PCDC meeting, but they discussed the Dr. Bopp zoning opportunities, and I just haven't had a chance to catch up with Paul to find out how that went. I did make the suggestion to the board of the Chamber of Commerce that they become more involved and actually participate by coming and asking for things that they felt were important to the businesses in town. And that's kind of behind the request that why am I blocking on his name now?
Michael Grace.
Michael Grace
Yeah.
came and presented. I think people are aware of the issue, which is that businesses do pay a very high property tax rate, and so it has that effect of making it very difficult for businesses to succeed in town. We end up with empty spaces and fewer starts. And so his request is, and actually the Chamber Board's request is that the town express in some way to the assessor that the town's aware of their efforts, and even though it may have an impact on our property tax collections, that on balance, compared with the negative effect on businesses, that we're not opposed to it, that we're supportive of it. At least in my mind, that could be that could be a letter from staff, it could be a letter from the board. Yeah, I don't know, what the pleasure of the board would be on that.
Well, I can tell you, actually, I thought his numbers were a low estimate. Our property taxes are 33%. 33%. I mean, it's another, add 30% to, or more to your monthly mortgage payment just to cover the rent or mortgage on your property. Almost 50%, add another 50% to that to get your property taxes covered. And so I think it is one of the primary reasons that our businesses are struggling in town. That, and then coupled with the fact that we have a very low population base full-time, of full-time residents. It just makes it really, really, really challenging. So I think all the property owners would tell you they would love to have some kind of relief to, because most of them don't also run their business. They own the property and are trying to lease it out. And so they're looking for solutions. We've had lots of conversations with them about anything we could do to try to help them fill spaces. And everyone's just like, it's just the property taxes are so high and the utilities. Our utility costs are high as well for businesses. So you put those two together and you're looking at $5,000 to $7,000 a month in rent for a small business. That's what you would hope to bring in a bottom line. So it's just really tough. And so I think we do have to have a conversation about that as to what can we do. I don't know if you've also tried to run a business in town. I don't know what the answer is. It's a really hard one. And I've brought it up to Singer and Fenberg about, it's really the Gallagher Amendment that really does throw commercial property tax out of proportion to residential, but it's not an easy thing to fix at the state either. So. Right,
and so did everybody understand what he presented as the alternative, which is to say, this is the earnings, the income for the property, and that would have and the Boulder County tax assessor has stated that they would take that into account on appeal, which to me is a positive. And so I also thought, if I were the tax assessor, I might be interested in how the town itself felt, or, given the situation. And so that's why, and if we were to do it, since this is the time when they should be sending in their appeals, that it would be timely to do it in the next short time.
Is this the time? I think maybe the education would be helpful.
They do plan to have a presentation at the next social about this very topic.
Okay, great.
But they're also asking for the town to do something, communicate from staff or the board or somebody.
Trustee Brown.
The implications of factoring income from property into the property tax evaluation can cut two ways. For a mom and pop business that has, in a small town that has limited income, that could help them compared to the comparable sales at a high level. For other businesses that really don't have much in terms of high property value comparable sales, but gross a lot of income, might raise their taxes. And so it's something we ought to look at carefully, and that might apply to a couple of local businesses.
Well, yeah, but those businesses wouldn't appeal.
Yeah, but if the town is going to be asking the county tax assessor to look at more of an income-based approach, you can't say that for some businesses but not others, I don't think.
No, that's exactly,
I think they actually can.
That's exactly the way it would be. So that if you don't appeal, the current situation would apply. If you do appeal, then they would consider the tax alternative.
So why don't we put it on we'll put it on the agenda.
It's an interesting issue, let me just say that.
Formal direction from the board to either write a letter or not. No, okay. Trustee Farrell?
I would like to know, though, what was the date of the Chamber of Commerce? Because I'd be curious to attend that so that I could learn more.
It's next Thursday.
Thursday next week?
Next Thursday, yeah.
Okay. I can look up it further than that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so the socials, you're supposed to be a member or...
The town is a member.
So the town's a member.
Yep.
And so I actually attend now as a representative from Lions Volunteers, so you could attend as representative of the town. So.
Trustee? Yep.
We have a Laura meeting that
Yeah, we did. but-
Yeah, that's right, too. Yeah.
Somebody's still right
And send a representative. Do you want to hit your mic? You're up anyway.
Oh, thank you.
There you go.
So it's my turn. Okay. Well, so thanks to the snowstorm that we had last week, I was going to go with Paul to the Metro Vision Award for the Lions Neighborhood Licensure Program and Handbook, but it was canceled. And I don't know when that's...
I haven't heard.
I haven't heard either. So, and it doesn't necessarily mean I have to go on the next one, but we didn't get to accept the award, but nobody did. And then in terms of the Arts and Humanities Commission, unfortunately, I was not able to attend the last meeting, but from what I understand, the Bell of Renewal that they've been working on, they've decided they're putting out a fundraiser where they'll create these kind of like cast plaques, so that if you make a donation of $250 or more, your name will go into this plaque, and then the plaque will go along with the bell. So maybe perhaps that would be a great way to get some more fundraising opportunities to go towards that. But I would say that's kind of one of the biggest things that they're working on right now. And we're still going to try to get at least one mailbox painted, or not mailbox, a utility box. That's apparently not as easy and just a slam dunk as you would think. It's crazy. So anyhow, we're going to work on one of those. So.
UEB meets, what is today, 15? Wednesday, 17th, 4:30. Basically continuing to work on the Chapter 13 of the code modifications. It's going slow, in-depth. A lot of stuff there, so that's pretty much what's been going on. Without having a town engineer there, some things have slowed down significantly, so they're just waiting to hear. Ecology Board have changed their meetings to Tuesdays now, back again, since we can no longer have the Wednesday room here due to the cleaning people. So we've been booted to Tuesdays. Town staff, how
Get
dare
that
you.
library done.
Gosh. So maybe a few that I may not be attending just because of the way I schedule things. That was put out there, but they continue to work on the upland project, which is just, I don't know how to describe it exactly. It's kind of like a master plan of just all our surrounding space around us and what lives there, what goes on there, how do we maintain it, so it's kind of like our master plan time update, and that's what they're doing. Just doing some Arbor Day stuff going on. Of course, working with weed mitigation, and they'll be at the meeting again. I just got the agenda about an hour ago. And Greg Lowell was a secretary, but now is second
Way to go,
vice
Greg.
chair.
Second vice
I don't know. He's going to protest, change the title on him. I just know it. I can hear it. I feel it coming. But pretty much that's it.
All right.
Okay, tourism marketing met, and you guys have all seen the awesome logo. So now that we have the logo, next steps are using that logo on the new tourism website that's being developed, and also some rat cards. So when we get the final of the rat card design, I'll pass that around as well. And keep you posted on the website ongoings. So that's kind of tourism marketing. Revolving loan fund. The committee has awarded 2 loans. One was in the amount of $1,500 for working capital, so that's basically to help businesses survive in the off-season. And the other one, well, maybe there were 3 given out. There was a $10,000 loan and a $20,000 loan, both for research and development for light manufacturing companies. And because we have now actually received applications and awarded funds, the USDA is going to give us that additional $35,000 for the fund. So very exciting revolving loan fund things going on. And I think that's all I have. Yep.
All right, I've had actually quite an eventful week. We started off with, we did have the PRC met last Monday. They have a new chair. Ian Brighton is the new chair of the Parks and Rec Commission, doing a fantastic job already. He was on there before, so he's very familiar with the group and their objectives. They had a long discussion about the weeds policy and where that stands, and apparently there's a lot of confusion about what the status currently is. There's some people that have the sense that the town has turned over these pilot sites to them to manage however they please, including taking out current plants and putting in different ones and things like that. And so basically it sounds like that there was maybe a sense that the staff were going to just try to like get through this year and then do a policy for next year. And I kind of said, I don't think that was the direction from the board. I think you need to come back and get us a policy, and I'm putting it on the May 1st agenda. Just because I think it's this is not good when we're still spraying in some places and people don't know what we're doing where, and we really need clarity about what we're doing. And so
It's the May 6th agenda. I want a few extra days.
Sorry,
if
I saw the
possible.
one and like, okay, so May 6th, first meeting in May, I said, we really need this policy back so we can review it and make sure because we're going to be the ones getting the questions. And, you know, it sounds like there's just a whole lot of confusion in terms of how people are talking about what's currently happening. And so, you know, I felt like we left it with staff that we wanted to see that policy after they've had a chance to review and decide what could be done, what could they incorporate, and then we would go from there. So I did ask them to follow through on that. Then they just talked a lot about maybe, you know, what other priorities do they want to talk about. They're interested in the drone policy as well. So I told them when that gets scheduled for a workshop, we'll make sure to let them know. They're also talking about maybe working on pedestrian flow. New routes, you know, what's the best route if you want to walk through town currently, and then, you know, utilizing the best intersections that are the safest once our lights go up, and they're working on that installation. So that's one of the things they're interested in working on. We also had a DRCOG TIP grant sub-regional meeting. This was 2 Fridays ago. I got a call from not the mayor, I always want to call her the mayor, but she's a councilwoman from Louisville who's the chair and on the board of DRCOG. So because we did not complete the paperwork for Main Street, we are essentially, we cannot apply for any DRCOG or CDOT related funding. How we got our Safe Routes to School through that just in time before this issue got to light, they're like, you're lucky because you guys are getting nothing basically until this CDOT thing is resolved. And she was really wanting to be helpful. She's like, your projects are really good projects. They meet all, you know, the criteria. We submitted the trail, you know, because we lost the funding for the trail. And then we submitted the improvements to Broadway, which I don't know how much we talked about that, but that's the one where we wanted to do the parking. And so we submitted that. And I had actually thought only the trail made it above the line. So there's only $15 million for us to split across all the communities in Boulder County. I get there in the meeting and, well, back up. So she called and said, what if Boulder County was willing to sponsor those projects so we could keep them in the funding? Would that work? And would CDOT give you a level of, or the letter of concurrence if Boulder was actually managing the products? But she had had a conversation with Boulder County, who was also there, and they were like, well, we're kind of willing to do it for the trail, but it also means they have to actually build the project. It can't just be that they're signing just to get us the letter and then we just go about our way. They actually have to do the whole project start to finish. And she's like, I could kind of see us doing the trail. I could tell she wasn't thrilled about it, but they were willing to go along with that so that we didn't drop off. One of the things that they're trying to do with this funding is make sure every community gets something too. So we I walked in and there were 2 spreadsheets on the board, one with lions, one without lions. It was a very, very awkward meeting for me because, I mean, one, I'm having to kind of go in there with egg on our face as to, like, everybody in the room knows why we're not, you know, all of a sudden Lions is out, all of our funding is off the table. Some people thought that was the right thing. That, you know what, if you can't show you can fulfill a project, you shouldn't get any funding. Other people were more sympathetic. We, you know, got a lot on our plate, and I play the flood card whenever it's helpful. So anyway, you know, Boulder was willing to go along with that and put the trail back on the list. Lots and lots and lots of discussion, horse trading, you know, lots of conversation about different projects and where they fall and should they get funded and should they not get funded. Superior has a project that they were the only community not going to get any funding in this whole round of TIP. But lots of, I don't want to bore you with all the details, but what ultimately, I tried actually to get our Broadway project back on the list. I was like, is there any way? Because that project, I know it didn't score as high from the Dr. Cog standpoint, but if you just think about that project, what an impactful project that would be for our community to get Broadway redone to the same way that Main Street is done. But they were like, no, CDOT shot me down and was like, no way, you're not eligible. And even Boulder County doing it would not get you back on the list for that. So I was like, okay, I'm just gonna sit here and be quiet now. But they were at a stand, there was a big project from Lafayette and Erie that they were kind of going back and forth on because Erie and Lafayette are fighting about this corner and they were worried, is it gonna end up in lawsuit and will it actually happen? Then Superior's like, well, my project should be on the list because it's got merits and things, and, you know, why is Lafayette? So I'm texting Victoria because Victoria's over at the Boulder County Collaborative meeting. So I'm like, okay, here's what's going on. We're on the list, now we're not on the list, now one's on the list, neither, you know, and I'm like, it's about $1 million. And I made an executive decision that I was going to give up that funding to let the other projects get on the list so that everybody would get some funding with a contingent that our two projects are number 1 and number 2 and the alternate right below the line. Because almost inevitably with all of these TIP grants, things fall apart with these projects and they end up funding the next couple projects in line. Had I not done that, we would have been completely at the bottom of the list, pretty much. I mean, we would have gotten our trail funding, but Boulder County would have had to manage that project because we could not get this resolved in time for this to go to Dr. Cog, which is Wednesday. So all of this had to be decided that day. No one could leave until this was resolved. And what it did, honestly, is it earned us an enormous amount of goodwill and kind of recovered our status a bit to where, like, okay, you just like really helped us all get to a place where we feel good about the list. We're right there, number 1 and number 2. And I actually got them to put Broadway first and the trail second, which actually put Broadway as the number 1 project that will get funded if anything above us goes and doesn't get done. And there's a really good possibility of that. So it felt like a win. It felt like, is this okay to do? But I was trying to communicate with Victoria and say, you know, this is happening. It was very fast, but it also felt like the right thing to do. I mean, these communities have given us so much funding for flood recovery through the collaborative. I mean, every time they're like, yeah, we'll give more money to Lions. It felt like the one time we could actually reciprocate that and actually get ourselves in a better position. So that was my executive decision at the moment. I hope the board feels good about that. I felt good about it. I think Victoria also felt good about it. It keeps our projects in play. Just also knowing what we know about that trail, what we know about how difficult that trail is with the ditch negotiations. I think we should still work on those things and try to get those things ironed out so that when the funding does come, and I really do feel like it will, we're in a good position to accept it. But the other thing is that this funding could come fast. That's why, I mean, literally, those projects could get rearranged in a matter of weeks. Because I know they're still having to redesign this intersection in Lafayette and Erie, and that's about the same amount of money as our Broadway project, if not a little bit more. And so we need to make sure this CDOT issue gets cleaned up prompto, because if we're next in line and we don't have that letter of concurrence, they're going to drop right down and skip us over, and then we will not see that funding. So,
how is that getting, paperwork getting done?
well, that was my question to her about, can we get DeFalco
That was where, okay.
to get this done for us?
I see what you're saying.
So that is kind of how things go, and I did confirm that everybody left with that same understanding, that Lions 2 projects are the next two. So I actually am like super excited the fact that I never walked in there thinking for a second we had a chance to get Broadway in this tip cycle. It was turned down last cycle, and I thought it was below the line even walking in there. So I was so glad I went to that meeting. But so that's kind of the update from DRCOG. And then the sub-regional projects will be presented to DRCOG this Wednesday. So I'll be going down there to vote for our sub-regional projects to be approved by the overall DRCOG board. So I may have to defend those rankings again, being at the top of the list. But I think everybody was so thankful for the resolution that we helped create that I don't have any concerns that would change at DRCOG.
What would be a disadvantage for having Boulder do the trail project?
You know, just the complexity with all of the land use agreements associated with that. I mean, I actually thought, there could be some advantage to having them help us with the ditch companies, maybe. I don't know if they have any better relationships than we do. The other thing is just there's going to be some, I think, with the ditch companies knowing we might need extra funding to, they wanted that head gate or whatever it was that they wanted, and is the county gonna, I'm like, are they really going to do this and jump through all these hoops, or are they gonna be like, the other thing about the trail is there's probably more funding sources for that, whereas Broadway, the only way we'll ever get that project done is through TIP. Whereas trails, there are lots of different places you can fund trails. And so, even if we're not, the other thing is look at our schedule for the next 2 years. I mean, when would we do that project? When would we have the time? Whereas the Broadway is kind of like a package deal. I actually think that one has a better chance of actually getting done.
We need to get a town engineer.
Exactly.
And has to up to speed before we tackle that one.
Right. So there's a lot. We have a lot on our plate. It would not be a horrible thing if that funding didn't come through for a year or two. I think that would actually be the ideal scenario. My worry is it's going to come through faster than that because of something else on the list. And there were a couple sketchy projects that just people were kind of like, okay, we'll go for it, but we're going to need this, this, and this before it will actually get signed off on. So we'll see. I just think, it's as good as we could have hoped for. I mean, I think it's as good as we could do considering our situation
It may have
currently.
been better because if we had been above the line with the trail, and that would have fallen down to whoever else was number one on
Right,
below the
no.
line list.
Well, walking in there, we were at the bottom. I mean,
You got where you got.
that's just but that's how, I will say Boulder County works together really well that way to try to help each other out. And so it did feel good to kind of be the way, help everybody get to a solution at a really tough meeting when everybody's got tons of great projects that they need done.
What are we still missing on the Main Street?
It's a lot of, I don't know, do you want to?
From my understanding, it's Buy America compliance documents, and because we've been unable to contact Joe, we don't even know the full extent of what we're missing.
It's a paperwork issue.
It's paperwork. It's federal grant money. You need to make sure everything you bought, and apparently it's pretty complicated, and the only person who can do it are the people who are on site, and those were Joe and DeFalco.
Oh.
And if Joe is not cooperative,
But CDOT knows what they're asking for. They should have an idea of what we're missing, right? Or
Yeah.
they just throw it out there, throw you the document, you got to fill in all the blanks. That's what I can't remember.
I don't know the details at all. I know is from secondhand from hearing what Victoria said. It sounds like that, CDOT has not been the most forthcoming exactly what's needed. That the goalposts have changed somewhat. It sounds like, but
I don't know about that. I talked to the CDOT gal quite a bit after the meeting and just said, is there anything we can do? I kind of, it's like we really obviously are quite concerned about this. We know it's a problem. We have to get it fixed. And she was kind of like, we've been calling you guys for a while about this. It wasn't, so I think the messages weren't getting all the way through. It's you know, we just have to get it fixed. And so I think that they're willing to help us however they can, but because it jeopardizes their funding. I mean, they're on the hook as well for federal funds for this. And,
Do we know, are we missing anything else in other projects?
There are other things that we're going to be dealing with down the road. I hate to say it, but yeah. So we're still trying to learn and understand the whole situation.
I guess to better address the question is I don't know, and I don't know if Victoria fully knows what's all missing.
Right. No, I think they're still digging through it. But I think DeFalco is right now.
Main Street project. Do we have any idea? Is there something besides that one project? Are there other projects that we think we're okay on that are we missing stuff? Are we going to find out a month from now?
I think when we have a good understanding of whether that's the case, we'll be providing an update. I know Victoria's working on it. Yep. So anyway, that's that. Then just really quickly, I testified at a hearing for DOLA. They were trying to get additional funding for the resiliency office. It was created under Hickenlooper, and the funding runs out, and 3 staff members would be eliminated. And that office has just been really supportive of us. So I thought it was the least I could do was go down and testify to try to get them through their hearing to get to appropriations. So I did that, and I got to meet Rick Garcia after all. I've met him once before, but I got to say thanks for his trip up to Lyons. So thanks for those of you who met with him. They were very appreciative. So that's all I've got. All right.
Move to adjourn.
Second. Sounds good.
You do it.
All right. All in favor? Aye. All right. Thanks.
This one's for you.
Oh, that's right.
Most before 10. I had a long update. I was like, I need to understand this whole situation.
Nice job.